Part 92. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 937. The chef brought the chef's hat, hair bag, and apron over and asked Zhu Huntang and Bai Hui to put them on. This hair bag is so ugly, Zhu Huntang was unwilling to use it. Beautiful girls should always keep their hair long. Miss, this is the most basic etiquette and chef quality. Your cooking skills are impeccable, and you must also have the same matching etiquette quality, the chef said very seriously. Even if you are an eldest lady, this is not acceptable. The bottom line of compromise. Zhu Huntang nodded. Her cooking skills were indeed impeccable. She was originally a tolerant, and broad-minded person. How could she care about her subordinates' disobedience in order to make her more perfect? Bai Hui helped Zhu Huntang wrap up his hair, and at the same time glanced at the chef with some admiration. Is he overqualified as a chef in this resort center? This flatterer is very good, and Zhu Huntang's cooking skills are impeccable. He can say such things, which is really powerful. Putting on a chef's hat and an apron, Zhu Huntang felt like a real chef, bossing around and arrogant in his own dictatorial territory in the kitchen. Because Bai Hui was originally wearing a maid-style low skirt and brought her own apron, she didn't wear an apron anymore. Moreover, if her pure white apron was stained with some jam, sugar juice, meat, etc., she could take advantage of Lu Chang'an's. If he doesn't wake up, rub it on his mouth. If he wakes up, I hope he knows how to lick it clean. Lu Chang'an should only understand this kind of little fun in front of certain people, right? Bai Hui looked at the radiator on the wall and thought. I'll see what ingredients are available, and I'll use them on the spot. After Zhu Huntang inspected the kitchen, he asked the chef to introduce the ingredients. High-end ingredients often only require the simplest cooking methods, but they represent the most elegant cooking skills. The chef pointed to the various ingredients that have been processed on the kitchen table: slicing, boiling, microwave heating, iron plate. The dishes can be completed by frying and stirring, and you don't need to sweat like rain. You can show off your cooking skills easily and elegantly. Of course, I have cut peppers, and I cut them very well. Zhu Huntang remembered what Lu Chang'an did last year, and said that the assessment task of Zhu Fenglai Jianmen was to chop 10 kilograms of peppers, but Zhu Huntang only cut off 1 pepper. And got Lu Chang'an's approval. A chili can only cost 1 or 2 at most, which means that your level of cutting chili peppers is 100 times that of ordinary people. Okay, let me first show you, miss, how to cut this round pepper. The chef placed a pepper on the cutting board, then took a plastic slicing knife and handed it to Zhu Huntang. This plastic slice has no problem handling crisp, tender, and easy to cut vegetables and fruits such as peppers, and it will not hurt your hands and is very safe. Zhu Huntang threw the plastic slicing knife into the trash can without hesitation, and grabbed a large kitchen knife under everyone's anxious eyes. When she cut peppers for Lu Chang'an, she used a large kitchen knife like this. Could she still use plastic knives now? Zhu Huntang held the handle of the knife with both hands, aimed at the center of the pepper, and slashed hard, immediately cutting the pepper in half, neatly divided into 2. Ha ha ha. Zhu Huntang laughed when he found that the kitchen knife had cut into the chopping board like last time. The chef and everyone in the kitchen applauded and praised Zhu Huntang for his knife skills. Miss, take a photo to commemorate. The chef quickly took out his mobile phone and quickly took a photo of Zhu Huntang. Does your photo look good? Zhu Huntang asked to see the photo after posing with a large kitchen knife. The chef gave her a look. Zhu Huntang was not very satisfied. The light was a bit dim. The chef quickly said, I will go back and ask my daughter to retouch it. She usually likes to take selfies, and the photos she retouches are all pink and tender. That's not bad. Zhu Huntang also likes the feeling of pink. Miss, I have a heartfelt request. I want to print out this photo and hang it in the kitchen to motivate the employees day and night, the chef said sincerely. No problem. Let's do this. It would be better if I take a photo with you. Bai Hui, you take the photo and send it to him. After taking it, Zhu Huntang still trusts Bai Hui's photography skills. After all, we are all fairies and have good aesthetics. Similar taste. Only then did Bai Hui recover from the shock. Was this a social person? After entering society and the workplace, everyone has become increasingly sophisticated in their face training, making them invulnerable to fire and water, and invulnerable to bullets and bullets. Bai Hui admired the chef's ability to flatter her. She just wanted to please Shang Guandandan with herself. No, she just wanted to make friends with her sincerely, and she had no other practical purpose, and she had no other purpose. Such lies and naked flattery. However, Bai Hui also gradually understood that there should be more people like this around Zhu Huntang. Growing up in such an environment, it is no wonder that Zhu Huntang became a real fairy. She was blown up in the sky all day long and could not land on the ground. After making breakfast, Bai Hui carried a bamboo basket filled with seasonal fruits such as cherries and strawberries. As soon as he walked out of the kitchen, he saw Shang Guandandan holding a thermos pot in one hand and holding up her skirt in the other, walking slowly and calmly. Go to the restaurant. Bai Hui used to think that Zhu Huntang was an elegant young lady, but now she seems to be a crazy BBAA, while Shang Guandandan is the real elegance, especially the manners and temperament, and the words and deeds in daily life are all full of a kind of elegance. The upright and atmospheric feeling makes people want to learn. Except yesterday when she was swinging the chainsaw wildly, sometimes slashing into the sky, and sometimes hitting the concrete floor. Dan, it's time for breakfast. Bai Hui originally went upstairs to call Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan, even though Zhou Shuling said that Shang Guandandan would appear automatically during breakfast. Shang Guandandan glanced at Bai Hui's bamboo basket, reached out and took 2 strawberries and stuffed them into her mouth. Bai Hui saw her cheeks swelled for a moment, then returned to normal, and then she grabbed a few more cherries. He stuffed it into his mouth, nodded towards Bai Hui, and left the restaurant without saying a word. The Queen Mother was actively controlled by the delicious fruit and didn't want to talk now. Bai Hui stood there and was puzzled as to how she did it. As the name suggests, a girl's small mouth has a small cherry mouth, and Bai Hui's mouth could only stuff 1 cherry at a time and eat it slowly. Could it be that at such a young age, Shang Guandandan has already mastered the lip and tongue skills that girls dream of, the kind that can eat a lot of fruit at one time? Who wouldn't want to reach such a state of perfection? Because Lu Chang'an's cell phone was turned off, and it was inconvenient for Zhou Shuling upstairs to knock on her door to ask Lu Chang'an to come downstairs to eat, Bai Hui came upstairs carrying the bamboo basket without knocking, and took the room card and went in. Lu Chang'an was still lying on the sofa. Probably because the heating temperature in the room was high, he unbuttoned 2 buttons on his chest. This is normal. One time during the Chinese New Year, my cousin was drunk. Lu Chang'an sent his cousin to Bai Hui's house in the middle of the night. He only wore a thin jacket and the white shirt inside was unbuttoned. Bai Hui's mother said that Lu Chang'an was a bit arrogant. Just like middle-aged greasy men think it's sexy if a woman shows her vagina, middle-aged menopausal women think it's sexy if a man unbuttons 2 more buttons on his shirt and exposes his chest muscles. A woman's feelings about a man's chest muscles are actually the same as a man's concern about a woman's cup size. If a woman chooses a boyfriend who only has fat but no muscles, she often has the same mentality as a man who chooses a woman without a cup size. Let's make do. Sorry, he attracts me elsewhere. If so, of course it would be best. Bai Hui placed the bamboo basket next to the sofa, took out her mobile phone and took a photo of Lu Chang'an. The corners of her mouth were slightly raised. She usually saw his photo in another woman's space, but now she also took a photo of him. It's just that she can't send it into space. What does that look like? I'm afraid that the word bitch will be engraved on her forehead from now on. Bai Hui sat on the ground, leaning against Lu Chang'an's head, then put herself in the frame with him, and took another photo. Lu Chang'an looked very peaceful as he slept soundly. He had the temperament of a quiet handsome man that you don't usually see. He tilted his head to the side, giving him a somewhat lazy look. Wouldn't it look great if he added a filter for oblique sunlight? Bai Hui took her mobile phone and started editing pictures. She skillfully operated the photo editing software on her mobile phone. She looked at herself and Lu Chang'an in the photo attentively, and countless ideas for photo editing came into her mind. I want to create a sweet feeling, a dreamy feeling, a warm feeling, the feeling of a golden boy, a feeling of Versailles, but I can't make up my mind for a while. Do you want to make your chin more pointed? I feel like the faces of the two of them match up better, but I am not the kind of internet celebrity whose face is not easily recognized. Will this make me less distinctive? Let's try adding cat ears to both people first, right? Is this more cute? By the way, the maid style low skirt I am wearing today, how about a young master and maid theme? It just so happens that he also has this kind of temperament, and she is the kind of maid who is very doted on by the young master. Bai Hui couldn't help but imagine a maid calling the young master to get up. It was more like a two-dimensional animation. Bai Hui's cheeks were slightly red. Next time, she would ask Lu Chang'an to take a private photo of the maid in her low skirt. I wonder if he would be willing. Bai Hui continued to retouch the pictures, and when she was finally satisfied, she carefully collected them. When she saw the time on her phone, she quickly woke up, forgetting that she had come to ask Lu Chang'an for breakfast. When will you teach me how to retouch pictures again? Bai Hui was startled when she heard Lu Chang'an's voice. When she turned around, she found that Lu Chang'an had just been eating fruit from a bamboo basket while watching her retouch pictures. Her cheeks were blushing. This was just a photo editing, a photo of two people. What's wrong with making it look better? No. But, it doesn't matter, I have confessed my love to him, so this kind of slightly exposed affection will not make him laugh, right? Even in the current relationship between the two of them, Bai Hui is worried about his ridicule, which fully shows how disgusting his mouth is, leaving a serious psychological shadow on Bai Hui. At the same time, Bai Hui doesn't want to kiss his mouth at all, so Bai Hui doesn't want to kiss his mouth at all. AI has not done anything to forcefully kiss him or bang him against the wall so far. I'm not going to teach you. Bai Hui snarled and blocked his mouth with a cherry to prevent him from making jokes again. Recently, I was playing LOL mobile games. I wanted to change my name to playing Yasuo, but failed many times. In the end, I changed it to playing Yasuo. I suddenly felt that I lost all my momentum, just like I didn't perform well in an quarrel. Full of chagrin. I haven't updated well in the past few days. It's not because I don't have a boss. I always have insomnia and headaches. I set up a flag. I will update 200,000 words in November. Asking for a monthly ticket. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 938. Lu Chang'an sat up straight and fastened the buttons on his chest. He knew that his charm was often uncontrollable. In order to avoid Bai Fen's lust, when it was difficult to get his heart, he jumped over the wall and felt that it was okay to possess his body. Yes, Lu Chang'an must appear more conservative. Who makes it difficult for men to say that I can be sexy but you can't harass me? It's obviously a man's right, but he's being called pretentious, he. Men must be self-respecting, understand that they can say no to sexual harassment from women, and remember to protect themselves every day. I edit the pictures and check them out for myself. I usually don't send them out. Bai Hui added casually, not saying anything in particular. Lu Chang'an used his superb lip and tongue skills to remove the pit from the cherry, spit it out and ate the pulp. He took out his mobile phone and turned it on and said, "Wait a minute, let me look at the selfies on my phone that were edited to the same color as Japanese private rooms. Who posted them? Come. Don't look." The apples of Bai Fen's shy cheeks bulged. She reached out to hold down Lu Chang'an's phone, and swiped her palm back and forth on the screen. She didn't know if she wanted to block the entire screen, or if she thought this would allow those photos to be captured. Just like wiping it off. This was not the first time that Lu Chang'an was so close to Bai Fen. He could clearly see the details of the makeup on her cheeks. It was light and it was exactly what a girl's makeup should look like. It was not so rich that it could only be seen from a distance. Up close, it looked like paper. It has the feeling of handcrafted brushing and grouting. When it comes to makeup, it's like applying paste. Let me praise Zhou Shuling and Shang Guandandan by name. These two are the best among them. Lu Chang'an had previously praised Bai Hui's makeup skills, which could turn things into magic. It was just a joke, just like Lu Chang'an often said that Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling were average looking and not pretty enough. Bai Fen has a very good foundation. Just like the beauties of the 1980s and 1990s, she always has her own temperament and face shape, and is highly recognizable. She will not have the same look as many online photos nowadays. Her eyes are big and clear, like a puppy with wide, watery eyes, and its head tilted to look at you, making people want to touch her head to comfort them. If you don't want to look at it, just look at it. Lu Chang'an saw that her mouth was slightly pouted, revealing a slight gap, just enough for a spit dart to be inserted. He had also done this before. According to Zhu Huntang's theory, it was an indirect kiss. When I think of Zhu Huntang, the hint of charm that seems to be there is immediately dissipated. Zhu Huntang's theory also leads to another conclusion. Lu Chang'an spat on her butt, which is equivalent to kissing her butt, which is equivalent to swearing an oath. Be loyal to her, and she will become a member of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect. Before she could finish speaking, she was beaten by Lu Chang'an. Is Zhu Huntang up? Morning is a good time to study. Doesn't she usually study with Yan Qingcheng at this time? Lu Chang'an asked. How come you are like a parent, and you know how to encourage people to learn day by day? Bai Hui also took the opportunity to stand up, turned his head and tugged on his apron with some regret or coyness. He had just looked at Lu Chang'an. Looking at each other at such a close distance, if they were in idol dramas, they would usually kiss each other. Bai Hui's heart was beating like thunder. Fortunately, such a situation did not really happen, otherwise it might be very awkward to meet and get along with each other in the future. Learning and labor are things that can make people happy physically and mentally, and are truly happy. Lu Chang'an said seriously. Other games, such as clubbing, drinking, drawing cards, and even meat, are all short-lived, superficial, and even it creates a sense of emptiness, false happiness. Bai Hui was not surprised when he suddenly jumped out of the ambiguity and started talking about study, life, and principles. This was also Lu Chang'an's daily behavior pattern. Other boys will find an opportunity for ambiguity, and they will continue to be ambiguous, and even find reasons and opportunities to push him away. From this aspect, Lu Chang'an is not smart. The smell of meat? What is the smell of meat? Bai Hui followed Lu Chang'an's rhythm as usual and did not stay in the ambiguous mood for too long. He would even spit into other people's mouths, and spit on others' faces when they were standing on tiptoe with sparkling eyes. Is there any twist that he couldn't turn around? His turning point is often the level of rotation of the Earth's magnetic field, which can trigger biological extinction. The analogy occurs when he talks to a girl, which can strangle the deer in the girl's heart. Confucius heard Shao music in the 3rd year of King Jing of Zhou and the 25th year of Lu Zhaogong. He was 35 years old and fled from Lu Tuqi before he heard Shao music. In fact, Shao music is an ancient music that was born 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. Even Confucius, who already had a certain status and influence at that time, only had the opportunity to listen to Shao music nearly 2,000 years after its birth and at the age of 35. It is enough to show that at that time, music appreciation was completely monopolized by the ruling class. That's why Confucius said that after hearing Shao Li, he was not in the mood to have sex with women for 3 months. That's what he meant. It didn't mean that he had no taste for eating meat for 3 months, Lu Chang'an explained. You're talking nonsense, Bai Hui protested with his eyes widened. Lu Chang'an often misinterpreted some allusions and poems. He was worthy of being the teacher who gave Zhu Huntang a general knowledge class on traditional culture. There really are just as many students as there are teachers. Power is often associated with female sex. In that era, most women were ugly, and stunning beauties, like Xiao Li, could only be enjoyed by a few people. Do you think Xiao Li had such a status in Confucius' mind? So high, would he use the analogy of eating meat? Lu Chang'an waved his hand. Bai Hui bit her lip and stared at him. The most suffocating thing about people like Lu Chang'an is that you clearly know that he is talking nonsense, but you can't refute it and still feel that what he said makes sense. Don't be unconvinced. Beautiful women are more common now. This is caused by the progress of the times and the improvement of living standards. In many film and television novels, men often abandon women for power. However, during the Xia, Shang, Zhou, Spring, and Autumn and Warring States periods, the number of stunning beauties' charm is often more important than power, and many men seize power just to get beautiful women. Lu Chang'an pressed Bai Hui's head, pushing her down a little. Of course Bai Hui was not convinced. Knowing that Lu Chang'an was often angry with Zhu Huntang, he used Zhu Huntang's remarks to annoy him. The Guanju that Xiao Tang said is a story about the second generation of top rich who robbed civilian girls. Is that right? After all, the family that has bells and drums is the ruler who has mastered Xiao, right? Actually, she is right. If you think about many things you take for granted, you can discover new perspectives and connotations. You can learn from Zhu Huntang on this, and don't let your habitual thinking restrict your ability to expand your imagination. After Lu Chang'an finished speaking, he stood up and walked out the door. He always felt that Shang Guandandan, Zhou Dongdong and other professional eaters were already howling. Bai Hui carried the bamboo basket again and followed Lu Chang'an downstairs. This was originally a fruit that everyone ate together for breakfast, but it felt like Lu Chang'an had eaten a lot just now. When I came to the restaurant, I saw Zhou Dongdong sobbing OM and asked Zhou Shuling. It turned out that she had been holding a glass bead in her mouth and refused to spit it out, claiming that she could keep it in her mouth. He was having a meal there and was beaten because of his firm attitude. Zhou Shuling also reported that Zhou Dongdong was buried in a sheep dung ball. Lu Chang'an was very happy to hear it. He was such a good boy. He helped others twice early in the morning. It was a pity that he was not at the scene by mistake the first time. I missed it. Lu Chang'an couldn't help but think of the sheep that were submerged in sheep dung balls last night. It seemed that they were not missed. Never mind, it's no fun. Don't be angry, sit next to me, Lu Chang'an said to Zhou Shuling with concern. Both Zhu Huntang and Zhou Dongdong made people worry. Shang Guandandan was walking around the dining table, taking a ruler and placing the tableware neatly with uniform spacing. Then he breathed a little tiredly, but still strutted to the front seat and sat down, doing the morning's housework. Dandan is so hard-working. Dan, the arrangement is so neat, it feels a bit like that kind of aristocratic dinner party. Bai Hui received some enlightenment in the kitchen today, and naturally praised Shang Guandandan. While talking to Dandan, Bai Hui naturally sat down under Shang Guandandan's hand. It was also inadvertent that he sat next to Lu Chang'an. We were all friends, so we sat casually, hoping that no one would care. Bai Hui raised his head and looked at her. Falling on Yan Qingcheng opposite, he smiled and nodded, then turned to talk to Shang Guandandan. Yan Qingcheng didn't have any feelings or emotions. Bai Hui's steak show last night had already made Yan Qingcheng faint. Hui, can you do housework? Shang Guandandan considered his daughter-in-law. Of course, it was not only to observe the other party's palace fighting skills and whether she was filial to herself, but also to be virtuous, diligent, and kind. Shang Guandandan was very fond of Zhou Shuling. Satisfaction lies in the fact that she fully conforms to the words virtuous, diligent, and kind. Yes, I fried the steak for breakfast today. By Hui, like many girls in modern cities, is not particularly good at housework, but she is not as ungrateful as Zhu Huntang. I have no experience in the kitchen, but I like to show off my skills and think my cooking skills are top-notch. I also fried love eggs. I fried them in a mold, but I only fried one. If Zhu Huntang happened to give the love eggs to Lu Chang'an when he was waiting for breakfast, it was purely a coincidence. The steak and love eggs are fried with white fennel, but these are the products of Chef Zhu because she sprinkled salt on them at the end. There is no problem with this. Zhu Huntang is in the kitchen of Bailong Center. The chef is Zhang Jiai. He prepares the steak for Zhu Huntang. He just watches the whole preparation process and is responsible for sprinkling some salt in the end. But this is also the chef's dishes on the menu. I will also teach you some housework tips in the future. After you go back, turn on the faucet so that water drips just enough and the water meter does not turn. Over time, you can save a lot of water bills. Money is a small thing, but this kind of frugality, your attitude towards life must be consistent with mine. Shang Guandandan lectured seriously. Okay, Bai Hui raised her hand and nodded vigorously. Although her neighborhood had long since eliminated the honest water meter, as Shang Guandandan said, attitude is the most important. Do you know that your vending machine is purchased by yourself every day and credited to your own account? This plan to make your business bigger and bigger also involves a lot of handling fees. Over time, a lot of money will be wasted. Lu Chang'an reminds Shang Guandandan that there is also a problem with the method of doing business through running water. Shang Guandandan touched her ears and started to pour herself some water. Just now she was thinking about tips on frugal life, but she didn't hear what Lu Chang'an said at all. Thanks to the boss, Ghost Dan 17 swaths, for the generous reward of 100,000 starting coins. The reward will be updated with 10,000 words on November 2nd. I wish the boss will live forever and never die. The boss is not confused. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 939. Lu Chang'an waved to Zhou Dongdong, who was still leaning against the door with no expression on his face, but insisted on making repetitive and rhythmic cries. Children like to be helpful, but they had two helpful experiences in the morning. They were inevitably hurt physically and mentally, and felt a little aggrieved. They had to keep humming in the hope that someone would pay attention to the sad children. Zhou Dongdong pinched the glass beads in his hand and did not dare to put them into his mouth. He walked between his mother and brother Chang'an, glanced up at his mother, climbed onto brother Chang'an's lap and sat down, then stretched his neck to observe the dining table. Something delicious. There were only fruits in bamboo baskets on the table. At this time, the bamboo chef, wearing a chef's hat, swaggeringly led the kitchen dining car into the restaurant and began to direct the distribution of various dishes. This steak and eggs are jointly produced by Bai Fen and I. It is perfect and fully reflects our superb cooking skills. Although as a chef, there is no need to mention other cooperating personnel, but Bai Fen has an unusual relationship after all. What's more, Zhu Huntang wants Lu Chang'an to understand that Hui Hui is a woman who can satisfy his appetite. White fennel itself is a delicious little white pig, and it also has a bear, which reminds people of bear paws and honey. They are both representatives of gourmet food. It can also make exquisite breakfasts. Its cooking skills are second only to Zhu Huntang, and it is also proficient in tea art. It is simply she is the representative of the perfect girlfriend. Lu Chang'an took a look and saw that the raw materials of the steak were good. The thick-cut, fully cooked steak, paired with the carefully designed presentation materials, looked quite good. Just looking at the traces of salt grains being spread evenly and wiped on some steaks, Lu Chang'an was certain that Zhu Huntang was only responsible for spreading the salt, and then she spread it here and there, forcing others to help her. Wipe off excess salt afterward. Everyone applaud. After Shang Guandandan finished speaking, he led everyone in applause. Suddenly, the restaurant burst into applause like a conference room. Although Zhu Huntang could not become his beloved daughter-in-law, Shang Guandandan's love for her was not weak at all. Such a cute little fairy Cheng Huan brought Shang Guandandan to enjoy a lot of family happiness. As for the others, they are all well-educated socialites. It can be seen that Shang Guandandan's status is full of repression. Even Zhu Huntang can please people. She takes the lead in applauding. Why don't you follow? You think you are Lu Chang'an? Zhu Huntang raised his hand proudly, signaling for everyone to stop, and then introduced the second dish. This is a dish I invented temporarily, with 9 stars in a row. In the future, when I invent more dishes, it will form a new cuisine, Mi cuisine. A small bowl contains small tomatoes, small bell peppers, olives, dates, green oranges, prunes, eggs, figs, and crab apples. Some are fresh fruits and some are canned fruits, a total of 9 kinds. Is this called inventing a dish? It's even more exaggerated than when Zhou Shuling said she invented the omelette. Put 9 kinds of vegetables and fruits together and call it a new dish. If you add a few more fruits and arrange them together, Zhu Huntang can invent more kinds of dishes than have been created since the birth of mankind. The 8 major cuisines are not enough for her, let alone French, Italian, and the like. Lu Chang'an suppressed the feeling of being angry with her. After all, she was doing something. As long as she did something serious, don't worry about these details. Are you convinced? Zhu Huntang paid attention to Lu Chang'an's expression and said proudly. She knew that in the whole restaurant, only the bad old man did not give her face and liked to mock her. Now even Lu Chang'an has nothing to say, which shows that Chef Zhu is really a genius and his cooking skills are extraordinary. If you are still interested in cooking next time, you can participate in the World Culinary Competition or something like that. As long as you are the best sponsors, it is completely easy to get titles like God of Cooking. Lu Chang'an glared at her, which was really annoying. Lu Chang'an took a bite of the salty steak and was too lazy to pay attention to Zhu Huntang. Zhou Dongdong in his arms had disappeared after the steak was placed, so it would not affect Lu Chang'an's meal. It's so beautiful. Zhou Shuling stirred it with a fork and said to Zhu Huntang in surprise, look, it can change its appearance at any time, it's colorful. Yan Qingcheng looked at Zhou Shuling with some surprise. She couldn't figure out whether Zhou Shuling was applauding her because she was smart, or if she just really thought so. She suddenly realized that perhaps none of the women around Lu Chang'an were really stupid. You can put this on the rice noodle shop's menu. After eating the red soup spicy chicken noodle, you can also have some rich varieties of fruits to moisten your mouth, Shang Guandandan suggested sincerely. I can supply the goods to you. The initial trial sales can be cheaper. Let's sell it for 500 yuan a bowl. Zhu Huntang thought of a more suitable price. Zhuji restaurant didn't sell it at such a high price, but this is Zhu Huntang. Handmade, the level is different. How many people can afford 500 yuan a bowl? Bai Hui looked at the small bowl in front of him, and then looked at Zhu Huntang. With the popularity of the red soup spicy rooster noodle shop, how could he do such a stupid thing? Maybe it will be on the hot search, which will ruin the popularity among passers-by. Although Zhu Huntang is a good sister, Bai Hui's brain is not bad, and she doesn't want her to ruin the reputation of Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling's fan shop. Why should I care if others can afford it? The point is, this is a dish I invented. It's too cheap and a bit shameful. The official sales price is best set at around 2,000 yuan. After all, it's just a side dish. Zhu Huntang doesn't like the fireworks of the world, but she also knows the sufferings of the world, but that has nothing to do with her, so her pricing is naturally reasonable. No, Lu Chang'an waved his hand, hurry up and serve. Yan Qingcheng sighed. Fortunately Lu Chang'an was sober, but she didn't know if Lu Chang'an would help her when Zhu Huntang takes charge of the family business in the future. Otherwise, with Zhu Huntang's ability to toss, she might defeat the entire Zhu family. Lose. In fact, Yan Qingcheng doesn't know how rich the Zhu family is. Anyway, there is a feeling that it is beyond imagination. Maybe it is similar to the richest people. However, according to the gossip on the internet, if the children of these richest people take over the industry of their fathers, they will lose. Losing the family fortune seems to be just around the corner. If you don't help me sell my 9 stars Lian Zhu, be careful that I refuse to inherit the position of the head of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect in the future. Where will you find such an amazing and talented heir like me? Zhu Huntang issued a serious threat with an aggressive tone. And it looks fierce. I'm not in a hurry. I can be myself for a few hundred more years. Lu Chang'an looked down and said, by the way, why are my eggs the only ones that are heart-shaped? Zhu Huntang pointed at Bai Fen. I saw a heart-shaped omelette mold, so I tried it. Who knew Xiao Tang would share it with you? Bai Hui said, a little embarrassed, but this was just a coincidence. Revealing too much being shy would appear to be pretentious, so as she spoke, her tone gradually became normal, and the sweetness between her eyebrows was only faintly visible. The blue clouds are rising from the heights of the Li Palace, and fairy music can be heard everywhere. This makes the hearts of parents all over the world not to be reborn as boys and girls, all because the king is not satisfied with it. Shang Guandandan recited a poem in response to the occasion. If you want to recite poetry, recite it well. Zhu Huntang has learned poetry culture badly. Stop spreading messy and wrong knowledge. Lu Chang'an frowned. Shang Guandandan would only play a role in educating future generations. To negative effects. He was once worried that when educating Lu Qianqian, Shang Guandandan would get involved and cause intellectual pollution, which was not unreasonable. Where did I go wrong? I am already an unknown top scholar who has done some research on ancient poetry. If I write a few papers and publish 2 books, maybe my works will be included in university texts. Zhu Huntang was confused. Lu Chang'an always liked to accuse her wrongly. Can you see the mistake she made in reciting the poem just now? Lu Chang'an shook his head. She mentioned the sentence Li Gong in advance, and the last part was because the king was not satisfied with it. Originally, the king was not satisfied with it, so this sentence is also. I just picked it up from behind and made a fool of myself. Shang Guandandan is different from Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang has a wrong perception in her mind. For example, Jing Ke stabbed Prince Dan 3 times, which is what she thought. Shang Guandandan deliberately distorted the correct poems she knew, blindly make it up. The location of Li Palace is today's Xi'an, which is ancient Chang'an. Like the word king, it alludes to Lu Chang'an. The meaning of my poem is that Hui Hui's parents gave birth to Hui Hui so well that they finally took advantage of Lu Chang'an. Shang Guandandan held his head high and explained meaningfully. The Queen Mother's words were naturally implicit and profound. Lu Chang'an only knows how to dwell on the surface, but does not think deeply about the meaning behind Shangwen's indifference. After all, he has fallen behind. As expected, everyone in this room needs his own training and instruction. The Queen Mother's fragile body bears a heavy burden. Dan, how could I take advantage of him? Bai Hui covered her face with a napkin and talked about her and Lu Chang'an in front of so many people. She was so embarrassed that she almost hid under the dining table. Is there such an intention? It seems that in terms of attainments in ancient poetry, I have reached the level of climbing Mount Tai to achieve the ultimate level, but in terms of flexible application, I am still slightly inferior to Dandan. Zhu Huntang admitted his shortcomings, which is also the character that a good person must have, is to recognize mistakes and admit mistakes. It would be great if Dong Dong could also flexibly use poetry when speaking. Zhou Shuling regretted with anticipation. Lu Chang'an turned to look at her. He used to hope that Zhou Dongdong would be a fairy like Zhu Huntang, but now he had such wrong expectations. He didn't expect Zhou Dongdong to have a good life day by day. Damn it! Miss Third, you should continue to introduce your dishes. They are almost cold, Yan Qingcheng couldn't help but said. She really felt that if she continued like this, she would be led astray by this group of people. They were too abnormal. It's strange, ordinary people's outlook will be refreshed every moment when they are with them. If someone who likes to complain posts a complaint on Weibo, it will probably take 3 hours to sort out the criticism. The dish below is called Yuki Hong Chen Bi Miao. No one knows it, cough, don't glare at me, the name is not important. After finishing the warm and joyful love breakfast, Lu Chang'an sent the struggling Zhu chef Twisted to study with Yan Qingcheng, and then took the traveling birds, children, and little mothers out to play. Bai Hui acted like a follower, turning a deaf ear to her good friend's heart-rending howls upstairs, chirping like a happy bird and talking to Shang Guan indifferently. A dinner and a breakfast have made Bai Hui deeply realize how correct Zhu Huntang was when he said that pleasing Shang Guan Dandan would be of great help to Bai Hui. Why is there a coffin on the roadside here? Zhou Shuling said in surprise. There was also an iron coffin in Shang Guan Dandan's room, so the wooden coffin seemed ordinary. Shang Guan Dandan walked over as if she was attracted, opened the coffin cover and wanted to climb in, but Lu Chang'an carried her back. She was going out to play today, did she also plan to lie in it and let Lu Chang'an carry it around? The zombies are placed here, and they will come back to sleep at night. Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guan Dandan have watched many zombie movies, so they strongly believe that zombies exist in this world. Because he was still a child, Sun Wukong, and did not have strong magic power, so he might not be able to protect others. Zhou Dongdong climbed up with some fear while holding his brother Chang'an's thigh. Lu Chang'an picked up Zhou Dongdong, let her sit on his arm, and continued to walk forward. Last night, Shang Guan Dandan came in a little later than Lu Chang'an, and he didn't know that he had packed the coffin by the way. He scared the children early in the morning. It really didn't happen. Public conscience. Lu Chang'an, can you sit with one arm banging and one arm sitting calmly? Bai Hui asked. When a man shows off his super physical strength, he can always make a girl feel some admiration in her heart. The emotions are just like when they were children and saw that the little boy had something but they didn't. Shang Guan Dandan remembered his seating arrangement plan for the electric pony carriage and said, okay, at the same time, Xiaoling can sit on his left shoulder and you sit on his right shoulder. He is indeed very strong. Just like Xiang Yu, he can knock down mountains. Zhou Shuling has full confidence in Lu Chang'an. The one who hit the mountain is Gong Gong. Can you study hard and get admitted to Hunan University to improve your cultural level? Lu Chang'an said slightly worriedly. Mothers are very important in the growth of children. Zhou Dongdong went to elementary school, and Zhou Shuling's the cultural knowledge was not enough, and she refused to work hard. She felt sleepy, hungry, tired, and felt wrong every time she took the book. This is similar to Zhu Huntang. Zhou Shuling has not yet realized that she already has something in common with Miss Zhu, who she considers to be the ideal female image. During the growth process of Zhu Huntang, it was also because Su Mei did not play a correct, active, and effective role that she became so strange and inexplicable. She clearly inherited some of Lu Chang'an's traits, but as a result, she learned the skills on her own without anyone's guidance and education. It turned out to be transformed into a sheep. If other super beings had descendants, this skill would definitely be the most embarrassing. Strengthening the mountain, the world is overwhelming, the times are unfavorable, and the glory will not fade away, and the glory will not fade away, there is nothing you can do, but there is danger, there is nothing you can do. Shang Guan finished reading the poem indifferently, and snorted coldly. Oh, I remembered wrongly. I was so powerful that I pulled out the mountain. It was because I was strong, not because I was angry and desperate and knocked the mountain down. Zhou Shuling has studied texts related to Xiang Yu, and has also heard about Gong Gong's anger against Buzhu Mountain. Rumors, so mixed up. This is also human nature, just like how Zhou Shuling originally thought Ascend the Stork Tower was written by Du Fu. Even though Zhou Shuling used to have good academic performance and was smart, she has been away from school for so many years and it is inevitable that she will easily forget it. After she is admitted to Hunan University, she will definitely be able to speak a lot of poems and songs like everyone else without getting confused. Who is stronger, Lu Chang'an or Xiang Yu? Girls who are in the stage of secret love always like to associate any topic with the person they like. Bai Hui felt that Lu Chang'an must be stronger, but Lu Chang'an had not fought like Xiang Yu and had killed many people. If modern people want to win the reputation of strengthening the mountains, they can only participate in the kind of battle that looks like a brain. The strongman competition in question. Of course it's Lu Chang and Shang Guandandan said with certainty. Furthermore, after Xiang Yu was defeated, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with him. He felt that it was great that he could conquer the mountains. It was just that he was unlucky and the horse refused to run. In the end he will only find women to moan and groan at. Lu Chang'an is definitely not like this. Lu Chang'an nodded. Shang Guandandan rarely had a few good words to say about Lu Chang'an, so there was nothing wrong with her point of view. Modern people often think of Xiang Yu as a tragic hero, but in the eyes of the Han Dynasty royal family, who was the ultimate winner of the world, who did he count? He is just a reckless man who defeated the army. Xiang Yu's battles were all in the Civil War. In terms of outstanding military achievements, Shang Guandandan did not see such a figure at all. Even if Lu Chang'an fails, he will ride a horse and take a woman with him. While the horse is shaking, he will find a grave to dig out money and wait for the opportunity to make a comeback. Instead of blaming everyone and asking what the woman should do, Shang Guandandan patted Lu Chang'an affirmatively. Shang Guandandan really didn't learn well. She had learned all the old tricks and old sayings like Ma Zhen. Lu Chang'an gave her 3 chestnuts. Being so short makes it easier for people to knock on the head and Tianling Gai. Zhou Shuling and Bai Hui both smiled shyly, feeling that Lu Chang'an really wouldn't blame this and that like Xiang Yu did, but would do what Shang Guandandan said, which was what Lu Chang'an they were familiar with would do. But Zhou Shuling and Bai Hui looked at each other and noticed each other's expressions and shy smiles, and they couldn't help but have doubts. Did Zhou Shuling / Bai Hui think that she was the woman he was riding with? Bai Hui quickly dismissed this thought. How could it be possible? Although Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling have a close relationship, they get along very naturally, and they don't feel like they are rubbing each other against each other. Moreover, Lu Chang'an clearly treats Zhou Dongdong as his little sister, which is a big difference in their generation. Zhou Shuling didn't think much about it. She felt that Bai Hui wanted to be the woman who flirted with Lu Chang'an, so let her be her. Zhou Shuling fed his horses grass at home and kept them fat. Where can I dig money? Zhou Dongdong discovered the key information. This morning, Zhou Dongdong wanted to earn 5 yuan by working, but it was beyond his ability. As expected, making money is really difficult. That's why my mother used to work so hard. In the vegetable field, Lu Chang'an glanced at Shang Guandandan with a smile. Shang Guandandan was immediately shocked. Lu Chang'an's glance made her feel palpitations, dizziness, and staggering back, almost falling to the ground and dying. Sorry, I haven't updated 10,000 words per day for a long time. It needs time to brew. Today I only updated 5,000 words. I will definitely update 10,000 words tomorrow, and I won't come out to lick the cat's butt clean. Ask for a monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 940. With quick hands and eyes, Zhou Shuling supported the trembling Shang Guandandan. Looking at her excited look, she seemed to be about to faint at any moment, which frightened Zhou Shuling. This reminded Zhou Shuling of her feelings when her wallet was stolen for the first time, so she could understand Shang Guandandan's reaction. The stolen wallet contained the deposit that Zhou Shuling planned to use to rent a house. At that time, she was really cold and panicked and called the police, but she also knew that she would probably not get it back. At that time, mobile payment was not very popular, and everyone was still accustomed to carrying wallets when going out. This was the time when some thieves with special identities were extremely arrogant, and it was not uncommon to even beat victims directly on the street. Zhou Shuling only felt that she and her daughter were going to live on the streets, confused and helpless, and would be knocked down and collapsed by someone's pity look, disgusting tone, or even a little bit of self-pity. It was then that she saw someone renting out a house, the deposit was waived, the rent was set by oneself, and the rent payment date was set by oneself. Most people would think this was too unreliable, but in Zhou Shuling's eyes, it was a life-saving straw, and she grasped it tightly. The landlord was a young man who often stayed in a daze under the sycamore tree during school hours. He never read textbooks but only read casual books. His grades might not be very good. Zhou Shuling thought at first that she might be able to help him with his homework. Zhou Shuling glanced at Lu Chang'an tenderly, a little angry at him for exposing the bad things Zhou Shuling had done unintentionally. Dan, I dug out your money jar. I put it back and added 2,000 yuan to make up the 5,000 for you. No one has touched it? You will know when you go back and take a look, Zhou Shuling whispered in Shang Guandandan's ear. Hearing this, Shang Guandandan's limp body stiffened for a moment, then waved his hand, leaned in Zhou Shuling's arms and turned his head, slightly opening his mouth and taking a breath, then seemed to calm down a little. It's really, ah. The instigator Lu Chang'an touched Zhou Dongdong's belly, his eyelids trembled, and all 6 extraocular muscles tightened. Although he had imagined Shang Guandandan's reaction, he really didn't expect her to return to the sun after returning from a serious illness. Really, dig it out when you go back. If you change the place, no one will know. I had to plant a tree to dig out your money box, Zhou Shuling continued to explain and comfort her. Only then did Shang Guandandan bend down and leave Zhou Shuling's arms. He picked up the thermos bottle that he had dropped on the ground and touched it. He pressed his slender waist, straightened his back that had been bent by the bad news, and lifted his shoulders again. Restored the majestic and upright posture of the Queen Mother. That's good, give Xiaoling another credit. Xiaoling is currently far ahead of the others. Shang Guandandan raised his hand. Considering that Shang Guandandan had just been frightened, Zhou Shuling smiled slightly and bent down so that she could touch her head. Dandan's behavior as a young adult, forcing himself to act like an elder, was actually quite cute. Shang Guandandan touched Zhou Shuling's head and was very satisfied. Dongdong's mother really loved the Queen Mother. According to the standard routine in TV dramas, such a relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law would make the family peaceful, but men would still cheat. At this time, the mother-in-law would stand up. On the daughter-in-law's side, she tried to find ways to make him feel at ease. The finale was a happy reunion dinner. The man went back to the bedroom to prepare for bed. The daughter-in-law was tidying up in the kitchen, wiping the shiny kitchen knife. A smiling face was reflected on the knife. The daughter-in-law turned on her mobile phone. I read an article called Gel. Of course, that's just a standard routine in TV dramas. It's certainly not the case in reality. For a woman like Dongdong's mother, she would rather give herself a knife than hurt Lu Chang'an. Dan, I don't think it's safe to bury it underground. I happen to have a safe that's useless in the studio. I'll give it to you. It's much safer than burying it underground. Bai Hui was a little jealous and quickly tried to win favor for herself. Brush up on intimacy. She saw Shang Guandandan often pet Zhu Huntang's head. At that time, Zhu Huntang was as happy as a dog, but it was the first time she saw that Zhou Shuling was treated like this. Bai Hui has realized that Zhu Huntang would care about it, which is absolutely extraordinary. Her best friend may seem careless, but she knows some things very well and has a very vicious eye. For example, Zhu Huntang always likes to provoke Lu Chang'an, and she is still active now, because she knows that she is absolutely safe in front of Lu Chang'an, but Bai Hui has also repeatedly seen that when her mother wants to deal with her, she will be honest. Bai Hui doubts what she said. It is true that her mother is the leader of one of the largest evil forces in the world. If she is disobedient, she will not be as safe as she is in front of Lu Chang'an. Zhu Huntang is so proud of himself for doing something to make Shang Guandandan happy. As an ordinary girl, not only is it shameful to please Shang Guandandan, but she also looks very smart. I don't know if Zhu Huntang's mother knows Shang Guandandan, or if there is any interaction between the two. Okay, since you have no use, then let me use it. When you want to use it, I will return it to you. Shang Guandandan nodded. After all, Huiwei and Dongdong's mother are somewhat different. Damn it, if Shang Guandandan doesn't say anything about not paying it back, then it belongs to the Queen Mother. Oops. I'll ask someone to send it over when I get back. Bai Hui jumped happily. Shang Guandandan knew rewards and punishments clearly. He knew that encouragement and praise were needed at this time, so he raised his hand. Bai Hui was a little embarrassed, trying to be reserved and bending down as usual, while stealing glances at other people's faces. Lu Chang'an shook his head gently. Shang Guandandan was addicted to touching his head. How happy was he to be touched by her? He smiled like a Shiba Inu whose head was being patted. The worst thing is that Shang Guandandan forgot his camera and other unknown shooting equipment on the mountain at the Inn of the Dead and forgot to bring them back. The Queen Mother is not interested in the functions of these equipments, but they can be sold for money and make a lot of money. The Queen Mother will be proud of them for a long time, raising her legs high in front of Lu Chang'an and walking with her feet kicking. Shang Guandandan couldn't help but feel a little sad. He was becoming more and more like a modern person, and he no longer even paid attention to the fine tradition of collecting food and supplies and trophies after the battle. Just thinking about these things, the 5 people were walking slowly on the road, preparing to go horseback riding first, when a red horse ran over first. Ferrari's car logo is a horse, because the representative color of the brand is red. The description: a red horse reflects high-end knowledge and excellent taste, as well as a tacit understanding of knowing and smiling with wealthy people. This kind of car is quite rare in the entire Greater Xiangxi area. If it appears in the same place for 2 consecutive days, it will basically be the same car. Wu Qinglian drove the car with a happy face, while Hu Gao was still sitting in the passenger seat. After Hu Ji ran away last night, he found Wu Qinglian and did not tell Wu Qinglian about the death of 3 Japanese people. Wu Qinglian's mood was not affected at all, and she pestered Hu Ji to ask for excessive things. Fortunately, Hu Ji is a strange beast. His intelligence may not surpass that of humans, but his ability in that area is much stronger. The reproduction of alien animals is much more difficult than that of humans, so only those with super abilities, long-term persistence, and multiple attempts can increase the chance of reproducing offspring. If possible, the alien beasts probably don't care about this super ability, and would rather obtain the same short, weak but efficient process as humans. After being hit by a red wave all night, Wu Qinglian still pestered Hu Gao after getting up early, and finally pulled her out on the road. Hu Gao even looked a little depressed. It was mainly due to the influence of his mood, and his physical strength was not affected much. Hu Ji didn't mean to blame Wu Qinglian. It was just work. Of course, he had to take whatever he asked for within his ability. After all, he had a lot of money, and he didn't specifically agree on how many times a day he would do it. Wu Qinglian stopped the car. She knew that Hu Gao had come to see Zhu Huntang and his group. She saw them meeting him, but Zhu Huntang didn't seem to be among them. Then Lu Chang'an didn't give her a good look, and Wu Qinglian didn't bother to pay attention to them. As for the others, their status is definitely far inferior to Zhu Huntang and Lu Chang'an, and there is no need to get acquainted with them. If her brother Wu Qinglian was here, she would be willing to help seduce the girl and young woman. So Wu Qinglian didn't get out of the car. Hu Gao walked up to Shang Guandandan, bowed, and lowered his voice and said, "Excuse me." Shang Guandandan was very happy. Could it be that he was here to deliver photography equipment? It would be great if all your wishes could come true, so I held up the hem of my skirt and ran around following Hu Ji to the side. Wu Qinglian didn't expect that Hu Gao was here to see the little girl she had caught a glimpse of yesterday, and she couldn't help but feel a little jealous, but after feeling the lazy and comfortable aftertaste in her body, she didn't bother to care. "Are you okay?" Seeing a stranger coming to see Shang Guandandan, Zhou Shuling tugged on Lu Chang'an's sleeves worriedly. Bai Hui also pulled it, simply because someone else did it. Bai Hui also had to pull it. Maybe it's Shang Guandandan's relative from ancient times who came to her to recognize her. Lu Chang'an made a casual guess. "Sorry, I only started updating today at night. I feel full and sleepy after eating something. If I don't eat, I have no energy and my brain is not active. Sorry, boss, I'm working so hard. Wait a moment. I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 941. Even if you are an orphan, you still have relatives, you just don't know them and don't keep in touch with them. Lu Chang'an also has relatives. Excluding the few people who have a close relationship like family, he is also related to a sheep. Of course he and Shang Guandandan are relatives, although he and Shang Guandandan have different perceptions of each other's kinship. It is difficult for modern people to understand Shang Guandandan's dedication to his son Lu Chang'an, but as long as he has a little understanding of the Han Dynasty's concept of filial piety to govern the world, it can be understood. This is one of the ideological cornerstones of national rule. As the chairman of the ruling group, it is the same as a character. Shang Guandandan will naturally take action to uphold this ideological cornerstone. In a sense, this mother-child relationship, which was born to stabilize the rule of the country, is more unshakable than the mother-child relationship based on blood. It is related to the stability of the country and the lives and fortunes of countless people. As for how Shang Guandandan treated her relatives from ancient times, Lu Chang'an had no way of knowing. He suspected that even though Shang Guandandan was a little bird that had survived since ancient times, she had no memory of before she became Shang Guandandan. Anyway, she is confused and idle all day long, hanging out among old men and old ladies, just like Lu Chang'an is just an ordinary college student now. Is the woman in the car also a relative of Dan Dan? A woman driving a Ferrari is quite elegant. I will also drive a Ferrari in the future, Bai Hui said enviously. Bai Hui has seen Zhu Huntang's Ferrari parked in the corner of the garage gathering dust. Zhu Huntang doesn't own any sports cars because she can't drive herself, and the four-seater versions of most sports cars don't have a good riding experience in the back row. Zhu Huntang only has she likes to sit in the back seat of big cars. It would be better if Lu Chang'an could ride an electric car to clear the way for her. Lu Chang'an doesn't think there is anything wrong with Bai Hui's dream. In fact, luxury cars nowadays are only related to income and have little to do with status. Many internet celebrities, anchors, micro-businessmen, and online store owners may have just made a fortune. If you don't have a pen and don't have much money left in your pocket, you should buy a Rolls-Royce Cullinan and drive it first, just to enjoy it. That's the concept of consumption. Some people joke that in order to distinguish themselves from ordinary internet celebrities and anchors, today's top rich people still have to bring a team with them, otherwise they will not be able to stand out. This car is very expensive. If I buy a minivan like the one that Miss Zhu often follows, the more people it can seat, the more cost-effective it will be, Zhou Shuling said very shrewdly. It's just a car anyway, as long as it's not too big to feel parking is difficult when driving, so of course the more people on the bus, the more cost-effective it is. But Zhou Shuling just thought about it. She didn't plan to buy a car. There was no need. If everyone bought a car, wouldn't buses and subways be wasted? Dan Dan's electric car is very practical, but it seems that Dan Dan treasures her electric car very much. Zhou Shuling wants to learn to ride an electric car, but is afraid of damaging Dan Dan's baby. Zhou Dongdong, what kind of car do you want to buy? Lu Chang'an asked Zhou Dongdong, who was playing with glass beads. Looking at her stupid look, he knew that she wanted to stuff glass beads into her mouth again. Lu Chang'an diverted her attention. I think, I want to buy a garbage truck. Zhou Dongdong thought for a while and said. Why? Lu Chang'an asked. As long as I buy a garbage truck, all the garbage on the street will be mine, and I can sell it for money. Zhou Dongdong said with some anticipation. I made an appointment with Song Dazi to buy a garbage truck in the future. The two of them would drive out to collect garbage every day, playing Papa Team songs while collecting garbage. After making money, they would find more classmates to collect garbage. Have ideals. Lu Chang'an gave a thumbs up and praised. There is no distinction between high and low professions. Someone has to do it in all walks of life. Why can't a resourceful and brave child like her do such a thing as collecting garbage? This means that she always has a child who comes last in the exam. Why can't it be me, Zhou Dongdong? The same idea, in the final analysis, this idea was inherited from Zhou Shuling. Lu Chang'an did not explain to her that buying a garbage truck did not mean that the garbage would belong to her. Is my idea of buying a van better than hers? Zhou Shuling asked Lu Chang'an uncertainly. Not necessarily, Lu Chang'an said to the little mother, who only knew how to compare with her own daughter. Zhou Shuling was a little aggrieved, but she was much stronger, so she asked Bai Hui for help. Xiao Bai, do you think a van is better than a garbage truck? Bai Hui chuckled, I think it's about the same. What's the comparison between a van and a garbage truck? It's not as good as my Ferrari. Lu Chang'an should praise Bai Hui. Bai Hui stood on tiptoe, trying to get Lu Chang'an's idea. The four people chatted while walking forward. It didn't take long for Shang Guandandan to run and jump after him. Several people heard the roar of the Ferrari gradually disappearing and stopped to wait for Shang Guandandan. Dan Dan, what does he want to do with you? Is there any trouble? Bai Hui asked with concern. He wants to cooperate with the Zombie King. When Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling heard what she said, they didn't ask any more questions. When Zhou Dongdong heard such a majestic name as the Zombie King, he immediately declared that when he became a zombie, he would also become a child zombie king, only weaker than the adult zombie king. A little bit. Lu Chang'an didn't ask. He had actually been listening to Shang Guandandan and Hu Gao's speeches. Last night, the zombie queen exposed the zombie king's treasure. When they looked at each other, Hu Gao took the opportunity to escape. He ran a distance and found that no one was chasing him, so he knew that the other party had really let him go. Hu Ji had seen the speed at which the zombie king raised his chainsaw to kill people. He knew that even if he recovered his body and ran away, he would still be unable to escape. It was because the opponent did not chase him, but it was not that he could not catch up. After a night of relaxation, Hu Ji mustered up the courage to look for someone today. Through the clues of the hair last night, he knew that the zombie queen mother was the beautiful girl who looked out when he met yesterday. How did I know that I found her today? This beautiful girl didn't admit that she was a zombie queen mother at all. She said that she didn't have dark circles on her eyes, so she wasn't a zombie queen mother. Why did Hu Gao think that she was a zombie queen mother, even though she was wearing makeup? His skills are so superb that others can't even tell. Then she started to talk about some makeup skills, and showed Huki photos of her usual makeup, and angrily asked Huki why he thought she was a zombie queen mother. Hu Li had no choice but to ask for cooperation from the zombie king. Although the zombie king seemed to be a lunatic, he should be better than the zombie queen mother who was unable to communicate. Lu Chang'an is very interested in the legendary ancient witch hidden in western Hunan, but he is not interested in cooperation. Cooperation means that he has to work hard, but in fact he just wants to sit back and enjoy the results, and wait for the alien beasts to find the ancient witch. Join in the fun, make a good connection, and so on. It seems that my level of makeup is much higher than yours. Lu Chang'an was a little proud. In fact, men have been wearing makeup since ancient times. It is natural that Lu Chang'an's level is higher than that of Shang Guandandan. It's just that Shang Guandandan and Zhou Shuling usually like to hug each other to keep warm. They didn't ask Lu Chang'an for advice at all, and he didn't bother to teach them. After all, seeing how they look after makeup, taking photos and making fun of them later is part of the fun. He was just blind, so he didn't recognize you. Shang Guandandan was unconvinced. Her makeup skills put even Zhou Shuling to shame. He could recognize you even if he was blind. Lu Chang'an's words could always easily make people angry. Shang Guandandan ordered Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling to catch Lu Chang'an, then took out an eyebrow pencil and drew two mustaches on Lu Chang'an's lips. A group of people entered the scenic spot having fun. Although there is no prairie culture such as horseback riding and archery in the mountain pasture, according to people's preferred impression of the grassland, yurts, racecourses, archery ranges, etc. were all organized. Except for Lu Chang'an, everyone else asked to ride a horse for fun first, and the minority obeyed the majority. There are no horses that I like here, and there are no majestic horses with blood. Shang Guandandan asked with a little regret, are horses still raised in Hexi now? The Hexi mentioned by Shang Guandandan is of course not the Hexi of Junsha, but the Hexi corridor. In the early Han dynasty, the Hexi corridor had been controlled by the Xiongnu. Later, after it was occupied by the Han army, the Xiongnu lamented that the Qilian mountains destroyed our livestock, so that our 6 animals cannot rest, which refers to the loss of the fertile pastoral areas of the Hexi corridor. Since then, the Hexi corridor has been the most important horse breeding ground in the Song dynasty. Still raising them. In fact, many novel writers now, in order to show the aristocratic life, often write about the protagonist having expensive horses somewhere in Europe and America. In fact, the largest and best horse farm in the world is in the Hexi corridor, Shandon Military Horse Farm. It's about the size of 2 townships, Taipo, Hong Kong. Lu Chang'an patted Shang Guandandan's shoulder. You can go and take a look when you have time, maybe you will feel a little bit of the remaining power of the Han dynasty. No need, where in this world is not the place where my Han dynasty's power is not shining brightly? Shang Guandandan snorted lightly. For 2,000 years, the blood of our Han family and its spirit have spread all over the world and are deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. What's left of my power? In full swing. Lu Chang'an took a deep look at Shang Guandandan. Maybe he had always underestimated her. Shang Guandandan was not obsessed with the Han dynasty royal family. For her, she was tempered by fighting against foreigners and opening up territories in that era. The will of the country and the nation is the orthodoxy she recognizes. Thank you everyone for your tips. Thank you to Boss Ning 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 for tipping Zhou Dong Dong. If you like it, please chat with Zhou Dong Dong. I am continuing to stay up all night typing, and if I don't get a 10,000 word chapter tomorrow, I will eat the cat. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 942. Although Shang Guandandan repeatedly suggested that Lu Chang'an and her find a place to rebuild the country, it did not mean that she was dissatisfied with the current country and wanted to engage in feudal restoration. Lu Chang'an also told her about the deeds of someone who rebuilt the dynasty, appointed officials and concubines, and was finally eliminated by the police station. Shang Guandandan understood how powerful the police station is. It can do everything from suppressing gangsters causing trouble in bars to wiping out local armed forces. Our home is even adjacent to Posa Street Police Station, which may be the most famous street police station in the country. It is really not suitable to engage in dangerous activities such as jiangguo. During the time when Shang Guandandan was lying in the coffin and refused to come out, Lu Chang'an used holy ruins as an introduction to talk about politics to her and added a lot of modern common sense to her, in order to let her actively and correctly integrate into modern life and want to rebuild feudalism. Dynasty certainly does not fall into the category of positive correctness. I think you are very enlightened. How about I help you arrange a school to study in and take the civil service exam after graduation? Lu Chang'an sincerely suggested that with his support and resources, Shang Guandandan would have unlimited future. I don't study. Shang Guandandan was not interested. By observing Zhou Dongdong and Zhu Huntang, Shang Guandandan already knew that studying in modern society means being locked up in school, which is a very painful thing. In fact, there were real universities in the Han Dynasty. Shang Guandandan read a novel called Lin Yuanxing. In it, the Yuanzhou kingdom set up imperial college in the east. The official schools set up at the county level were called shui, and the ones at the county level were called schools. The rural ones are called Xiangxiu, and they use the teaching system since Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty. Yuanzhou is also the reign name of Emperor Wu. The first real university in the world was founded in the 5th year of Yuanzhou. Shang Guandandan liked reading novels like this, which gave her a sense of immersion, but since she had been the head of a civil servant, she had no interest in studying to take the civil service exam. She just wants to play cards, eat, and lie down in a coffin every day. If school is just for fun, she can still go to school. It is impossible to study. As expected of Zhu Huntang and Zhou Dongdong's good friends, Lu Chang'an shook his head. Come here and choose a horse. Zhou Shuling shouted excitedly that she was the one looking forward to riding the horse the most among the group, but she did not dare to ride it herself. To do such dangerous things, Lu Chang'an must be by his side. Even if he doesn't say a word, Zhou Shuling will be more confident. Many women are like this. Others may not be able to help her with what she does, but no one feels flustered when they look at her. Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan walked over. Lu Chang'an was the least interested because he ran faster than a horse. Shang Guandandan was interested, but her favorite pony, Kuoxiama, was not available here. There are no expensive sweat-blooded horses. Lu Chang'an said that this kind of horse is sick, but Shang Guandandan thought that this kind of horse might be the offspring of Lu Chang'an's transformed horse and a certain beautiful little mare. She did not say so, after all give the moth face, lest he become angry. There are several horses over there, can't you choose? Bai Hui discovered that at the other end of the stable, there were several tall horses circled. Although they were not sweaty horses, each one was tall and powerful, and they were obviously better than those for tourists to choose from. These are so much better. It's probably the difference between an A-class car and a D-class car, and the difference between the Volkswagen Sagitar and the Phaeton. Sorry, that's not a horse from our racecourse, the staff explained, it was found by the resort center next door. They said their boss might ride horses, so they found some better horses and put them here for preparation. However, I haven't seen their boss come to play. Everyone understood that this was Zhu Huntang's show. Regardless of whether she would come to play or not, such preparations had to be made. Who would let someone take care of every hair and pore in her life? Xiao Tang doesn't go out to play much, I think she would like to ride horses. Bai Hui turned back with some doubts and said to Lu Chang'an. She had realized that the boss in the staff's mouth should be Zhu Huntang. In fact, as long as she fights with just a phone call, these horses should be available for them to ride, but Lu Chang'an might find it troublesome or say it's not necessary. Lu Chang'an understood what was going on. Zhu Huntang would normally like horse riding. After all, she originally wanted to build a racecourse and a go-kart racing track on the top floor of Beilong Center, but Su Mei stopped her. After all, sometimes Su Mei would ground Zhu Huntang. If the place where she was grounded had too many places where she liked to play, then such a grounding would not mean much. In fact, even so, Su Mei's several bans on Zhu Huntang had no effect. It was not until Su Mei used the killer move of learning that Zhu Huntang learned the painful lesson. Now Zhu Huntang doesn't come to ride horses, just because she turns into a sheep to play when she has free time. Riding an animal with four hooves and running around on the green grassland is not as fun as turning into a four-hoofed animal and running around. They are all the same, let's choose a horse quickly, Zhou Shuling urged excitedly, standing next to a horse eager to try. You can choose for yourself. Zhou Dongdong and I will ride one horse. Children cannot ride horses alone. Lu Chang'an was responsible for taking the second most excited child to ride a horse. The race course costs 68 yuan for 2 laps for adults and 30 yuan for children. However, children must be accompanied by an adult, which is 98 yuan for 2 laps. There is no need to pay first. There are chips on the horses, and you can scan them after the race to know how many laps you have run. The staff briefly explained the precautions. The horses were very ordinary, but they were quite tall for girls and women. Both Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling needed Lu Chang'an to push their butts before they could ride on them. Shang Guandandan was experienced and got on the horse easily, but she refused to put down her thermos bottle, so the staff led the horse away. It was very comfortable to drink her effervescent water while riding the horse. The horses were all trained and walked. After Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling got used to the distance, they started to run slowly, making them shout with joy. However, I saw that Lu Chang'an's horse ran very fast, and quickly surpassed them when they finally started. Moreover, Lu Chang'an's riding posture was very handsome. They also wanted to ride faster, but they didn't know how to communicate with the horse. Bai Hui imitated the belly clipping method on TV but was stopped by the staff, while Zhou Shuling touched the horse's head to make it obedient. Look at Lu Chang'an riding a horse. Does he look like Zhao Zilong? 7 in and 7 out of the Changban slope. Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling jogged side by side and even talked about licking. Changbanpo has 7 entrances and 7 exits. Zhou Shuling has watched a bit of the TV series Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but can't remember it clearly. Yeah, Zhao Zilong went in and out of Changbanpo 7 times, and he also hugged a child. Lu Chang'an also hugged one. If he still had a knife in his hand, it would be more like it. Bai Hui didn't know what Zhao Zilong was using. Arms. But holding a child now with a knife in his hand will make people think that he has kidnapped the child. Zhou Shuling chuckled and followed Lu Chang'an's figure. Looking at his handsome back, she couldn't help but soften her eyes and smile at the corner of her mouth. It couldn't stop overflowing. Zhou Shuling also wanted to be hugged by him and run for a few laps. It must feel very good, but she didn't know why, and she felt a little guilty. Obviously being led on a horseback was not something particularly extraordinary. It was more normal, right? But when I feel guilty, I will think about things by myself no matter what I do. If I feel that this is not appropriate, I cannot do that. Zhou Shuling wanted to persuade Bai Hui to find Lu Chang'an and let Lu Chang'an take Bai Hui for 2 laps, but she didn't say anything. It's not that she's jealous or sour, it's just that Zhou Shuling feels that Bai Hui is interested in Lu Chang'an and it's her business to poach him. She clearly knows that Lu Chang'an has a girlfriend, so teasing Bai Hui is a bit too much. I don't know what will happen to these girls in the end. Zhou Shuling suddenly felt relaxed. No matter what happened to them, she should be able to follow him. After all, she was just Dongdong's mother, someone who had a relationship with him like a brother and sister. Lu Chang'an really looks like someone who would do something like kidnapping. Bai Hui laughed. Why? Zhou Shuling was a little unhappy, but considering that Bai Hui would not slander or have any ill intentions towards Lu Chang'an, this emotion quickly dissipated. He said before that he would arrest me. I was scared by him at that time. Bai Hui couldn't say much, because when he said these words, the first time was when he caught 2 thieves and threw them on the bridge. Next, He and she became a grasshopper on a rope. No, he said she was the grasshopper. He held the rope, but Bai Hui was not willing. She was a little willing because both of them were grasshoppers. The second time he buried Guan Yuan, and she was held by him again. He also threatened her, saying that he would lock her in a cellar or something. Lu Chang'an, who always said these things, must have a subconscious desire to capture Bai Hui as his. He often jokes. However, joking aside, he is still very serious in what he does and is a very reliable person. Zhou Shuling thought for a while and asked, "What do you like about Lu Chang'an?" What do I like? I don't like him," Bai Hui hurriedly denied. "Hey guys, we are high school classmates, or we are still working together, at the same table." Zhou Shuling smiled. In fact, Bai Hui is quite cute. She gets flustered and stutters when she lies, and refuses to admit it. Even a blind person can see it. Zhou Shuling was a little envious. The girl Kingxi was so cute, she wished she could still be a girl. The two of them were jogging on horses, and soon caught up with Shang Guandandan, who was slowly leisurely. The staff was holding the horse, and she was holding a thermos bottle and drinking water, looking particularly chic. "Dan Dan is always so stylish," Bai Hui said with a smile. "When I was 3 years old, my grandfather took me to ride a sweaty horse. When I was 5 years old, the emperor sent me the most beautiful fruit horse. They stayed with me until I died of old age, and were snatched away by others in the process. However, in the end, they all came back to me," Shang Guandandan recalled as he stroked the horse. Dan Dan was an emperor. In Zhou Shuling's eyes, Shang Guandandan was similar to Zhou Dongdong. He always fantasized about what he was and would take it seriously. Zhou Shuling often lectures Zhou Dongdong, but to Zhou Dongdong, who is a kid like Ultraman, a kid named Sun Wukong, a little airplane, etc., she will not refute or try to disillusion her. The same is true for Shang Guandandan, who is even willing to support her. "I have never been emperor, I am just a self-proclaimed person," Shang Guandandan said. "You can also call yourself me. Hui, go and tell Lu Chang'an, I will look at your sign tonight." "I don't want it," Bai Hui smiled and blushed. She knew that Shang Guandandan learned this sentence from the palace drama on TV the last time they played cards together. "I made egg fried rice for you tonight." Zhou Shuling imitated the sentence and covered her mouth and laughed. Lu Chang'an rode past them. He was a little confused as he listened to their chatter and laughter. They all called themselves I. Shang Guandandan's ability to pollute was really powerful. "After riding the horse, we went to play archery again. Yesterday we played shooting Zhou Dongdong, but today is the real archery. The attractions here at Nanshan Ranch are mostly visited by families. Many projects are suitable for parent-child play. The shooting range has also prepared small bows and arrows for children. The front ends of the arrows have also been treated for safety." Zhou Dongdong held a bow and pointed towards it. He shot randomly at the target without hitting a single arrow. Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling listened to Lu Chang'an's explanation of the basic methods of using bows and arrows. They were used to Lu Chang'an being able to teach him anything, so they naturally left the staff aside and listened attentively to Lu Chang'an's explanations and demonstrations. The most important thing is that when men do things like horseback riding and archery, they are really very elegant. Even ordinary men will look particularly handsome, let alone Lu Chang'an. Women lack resistance to the moment when handsome men show off their male strength and powerful attacks. Fortunately for Zhou Shuling, she usually sees Lu Chang'an walking around the house wearing only shorts, but Bai Fen couldn't help but when Lu Chang'an opened his bow, go pinch his arm muscles. Fortunately, it had no impact on Lu Chang'an. His arrow was still a true target, and even the staff and archery instructors nearby applauded. "Dan Dan, don't you want to learn?" Judging from Shang Guandantan's behavior of riding a horse and walking just now, Bai Hui felt that Shang Guandantan should be just like her in this aspect. They are both weak beginners. "I have no strength. I can't draw, shoot, or learn. Shang Guandandan refused to learn as usual. If she can draw the bow, doesn't it mean that she is very strong, especially in front of Lu Chang'an? Maybe when she goes back today, he will arrange for her to carry the sheep dung balls onto the helicopter. Shang Guandandan was full of vigilance, and had to be careful when Lu Chang'an tried to trick her. Today, Zhou Dongdong asked him where he could find money. When Lu Chang'an answered the question, he looked at Shang Guandandan. It still makes him sad when he thinks about it. Shang Guandandan was a little flustered. She started learning horseback riding and archery when she was 3 years old. Lu Chang'an exposed Shan Dandan without hesitation. I started learning horseback riding and archery when I was 3 years old. Zhou Dongdong thought for a while and said. When you were 3 years old, you were sitting on the ground playing in the mud and rolling in the ashes. I often picked you out of the ditch. Your mother often had to do voluntary labor in order to prevent you from choking on the dirty water or being in danger if you fell into the ditch. Keep the ditches clean and smooth. Lu Chang'an reminded Zhou Dongdong to keep his numbers. Am I like this? Zhou Dongdong was so frightened that his little bow fell to the ground. Brother Chang'an said it like a stupid child, which was not at all like a clever and brave child like himself when he was a child. Zhou Shuling smiled slightly. The horseback riding and archery Zhou Dongdong mentioned should be the little wooden horse that lost its 2 eyes. After Zhou Shuling picked it up, Lu Chang installed 2 glass balls as eyes for the little wooden horse. Zhou Dongdong also played a lot happy. Growling, Dongdong is so cute. Shang Guandandan put down the thermos, hugged Zhou Dongdong, and then picked up Zhou Dongdong's little bow. The Queen Mother was very weak and had no strength, so she could only play with Zhou Dongdong. This little bow and arrow. Shang Guandandan took a small bow and shot an arrow into the sky. He was surprised to find that when the arrow fell, it hit Lu Chang'an's head. Unfortunately, he actually caught it as soon as he raised his hand. Oh, it's not a pity. Luckily he raised his hand and caught it. Lu Chang'an glanced at Shang Guandandan and thought that as revenge, he should find a rocket to launch Shang Guandandan into outer space. Long March 5th is enough. Lu Chang'an was about to talk about the history of the development of bows and arrows and famous battle cases. A group of tall people dressed in ordinary clothes but not looking like tourists came in and spread out in 2s and 3s, making the staff of the scenic spot look around in confusion. Immediately afterwards, Zhu Huntang ran over, with an excited expression of "I caught up, what are you playing? Take me to play. We just rode horses, and now we are doing archery and experiencing traditional skills. Unfortunately, we are wearing low skirts today. If we were wearing hanfu, we would be more elegant when taking photos." Bai Hui took Zhu Huntang's hand and wanted to talk to her regret together. It doesn't matter. Next time, we'll book a movie studio to shoot photos, short plays, or music videos, and transport my horse there. Ordinary horses don't look good in photos and have no temperament. We'll bring 300 breadmen to wear chrysanthemums as sets off us. Zhu Huntang always has a good style in eating, drinking, having fun, and enjoying himself. Great, but what is chrysanthemum armor? Bai Hui asked doubtfully. The city is full of chrysanthemums. Have you never heard of Jay Chou's songs? Zhu Huntang frowned. Isn't Jay Zhou very popular here in mainland China? Jay Chou's song seems to be Chrysanthemum Terrace, and the movie he acted in is called The City of Golden Armor. Are you confused, Xiaotang? Zhou Shuling said uncertainly. She had watched it on CCTV 6. This movie. Zhou Shuling always watches movies on CCTV 6 and never goes to the cinema because she doesn't want to waste the money. Probably, it doesn't matter. You just like to pay attention to details. We need to improve our vision and mind and grasp the general direction. The details are the work of the people below to repair and improve, Zhuntang said indifferently. Have you finished your homework? Lu Chang'an has been glaring at Zhu Huntang for 3 minutes, but she turned a blind eye. Lu Chang'an couldn't help but ask. In this case, he should not report to him first. Dad, I have finished my homework. Now you can play. Zhu Huntang looked around in a panic, waved his hand, and then stared hard at Lu Chang'an, trying to control his thoughts with his eyes, and chanted, "Secret skill. Be invisible." After using this secret skill, the sense of presence in front of Lu Chang'an is reduced to the minimum. But you can play with other people without being affected. Lu Chang'an raised his hand and pressed his forehead. He felt that the cell activity throughout his body had increased, and super life energy poured into his brain. He didn't want to see her, so he turned around and saw Yan Qingcheng following behind, so he didn't bother to pay attention to Zhu Huntang. He walked over and asked Yan Qingcheng why he released BAA after such a short time. "Actually, I have been studying for an hour and a half. I saw that she was getting more and more restless and her learning efficiency was not very high. I had to remind her to concentrate for 5 minutes of the 10-minute lecture, so I asked her to come out to play. Is there a balance between work and rest? Today's homework can be done at night. It's a bit difficult and I need to help her to finish it. It just so happens that she has 2 more classes in the evening." After Yan Qingcheng said this, she smiled proudly. Her mother was a teacher, so she would inevitably be influenced by the fine traditions of some teachers. "I have found time to make up lessons for you again." "That's great. Everyone is very happy to continue to teach me class, right?" "Not bad." Lu Chang'an nodded and praised, but then shook his head. Zhu Huntang is now taking a 7th grade class, which is a bit difficult for her. What is there to be happy about? At this time, Lu Chang'an heard Zhu Huntang bragging from behind, saying that after she had just used her secret skill, Lu Chang'an turned away and ignored her because her secret skill had taken effect. He asked others if they wanted to learn her secret skill, but only Zhou Dongdong was deceived. Xiao Tang is really smart, but she resists learning and likes to act as she pleases. Nothing can constrain her thinking. Sometimes I feel like she is an alien, so her perspective on problems and things is completely different from that of ordinary people. Same, if you want an alien to think in the same way as an earthling, that's impossible." Yan Qingcheng smiled again after speaking. Firstly, he felt that his statement was ridiculous, and secondly, there was a sense of teacher and parents exchange feelings about their children's education issues. It is clear that Zhu Huntang and Lu Chang'an are both their classmates. "She's not an alien, she's a sheep." Lu Chang'an didn't think Zhu Huntang was so unwilling to study because of the breed problem. Yan Qingcheng's statement and explanation almost made Lu Chang'an feel guilty. Feel? This is not possible. Lu Chang'an has not developed any alien perspective and can perfectly integrate into the world of ordinary people. Zhu Huntang can't do it. Yan Qingcheng covered her mouth, raised her pretty face, and smiled sweetly. At this moment, Lu Chang'an finally saw the shadow of Yan Hui on Yan Qingcheng. It turned out that Yan Qingcheng's mouth shape was not as beautiful as Yan Hui's. Just like many girls like to wear masks, they really have a beautifying effect. What's especially exaggerated is that some girls look like super beauties when they put on masks, and when they take off the masks, they look like Her Majesty Chiao. Yan Qingcheng was usually considered a beauty, but when she covered her mouth, she showed off the amorous color inherited from her mother Yan Hui, but it was completely different from her usual feeling. "They have finished riding horses. I will take you to ride horses," Lu Chang'an said in a gentle tone. Although this chapter has 6,000 words, it is considered a big chapter, but it is not a big chapter to thank the boss. Today, the state has almost recovered. The cat still had 6 lives, but I took 1. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 943. Horse riding is actually a very dangerous sport, especially in the wild riding circle. We often hear news that someone was dragged to death, hit to death, or thrown to death. In fact, the number of deaths caused by being trampled by horses is the least, because horses know that their most important thing is their legs, and they will subconsciously avoid stepping on dangerous objects. Because horses have blind spots in their field of vision, collisions are common. The horse riding spots set up in this kind of scenic racecourse are much safer. The horses are very familiar with the venue and will not be frightened under normal circumstances. Even if tourists drive them, they will not run very fast, so this kind of riding spot is often connected. No head protection is provided to visitors. Of course, there are always some tourists who like to commit suicide every year. Living is uncomfortable, and if they don't commit suicide, their thoughts will not be clear. At this point, even Zhu Huntang is not as good as these tourists. After all, Zhu Huntang only acts in front of Lu Chang'an. She is not dangerous, but Lu Chang'an is very dangerous. Heart disease and cerebral hemorrhage often occur. I have ridden a horse. Yan Qingcheng followed Lu Chang'an. Although his gentle tone did not consider her opinion, Yan Qingcheng still felt flattered. After all, among Lu Chang'an, Shang Guandandan, Zhu Huntang, Bai Hui, and Zhou Dongdong, Yan Qingcheng has not completely integrated into their small circle. She is still receiving Zhu Huntang's salary. There is a big difference between a staff member and a personal friend. Yan Qingcheng felt that the problem was mainly her own. She was not the kind of girl who had a strong desire to fit into a small circle. What's more, to integrate into their small circle, it is easier for girls who are naive, stupid, crazy, and weird to do it. When a normal person encounters this group of people and insists on not being assimilated, he will automatically keep a distance from them to avoid being contaminated by some halo. It is rare for an outsider to be treated alone by Lu Chang'an. Even in Yan Qingcheng's eyes, Lu Chang'an is just a classmate and friend, but she can feel that when Lu Chang'an walks towards her, there are several eyes on her. On the back. Real horse or Trojan horse, Lu Chang'an said with a smile. Ha, of course it's a real horse, and I'm not a child, but the carousel in the amusement park can be played by both adults and children, Yan Qingcheng said with some longing. For girls, the carousel means it's about fantasy and romance, rather than simply saying how much fun it is. Who makes the carousel an indispensable scene in idol dramas or love plots? Lu Chang'an remembered the merry-go-round. Children like adults to take them to play the merry-go-round. Actually, I rode a sheep when I was a child. Since Lu Chang'an was willing to give Yan Qingcheng special treatment, Yan Qingcheng was also willing to reveal more about herself. No matter how big the belly is, children can actually find a lot of fun, which is unimaginable for you who live in the city. Haha, Lu Chang'an laughed twice. In Lu Chang'an's view, the countryside represents the past state of human civilization, while the city symbolizes the future. This is not a question of which living state is more comfortable, superior, or more advanced, but a question of the eventual demise of the countryside. Human beings, infinitely tossing creatures, will sooner or later exhaust the Earth's resources. When the time comes, preserving the countryside will be like various protected areas now. In the future, environmental problems, resource problems, population problems, climate problems, etc. will all deplete the countryside. Existence is becoming increasingly difficult. If you still have the opportunity to live in the countryside, you might as well experience it more. Even if there are small problems such as inconvenient personal hygiene in the countryside, pooping is still an experience, isn't it? Anyway, the countryside here is not like that in India, where women have to be dealt with in the wild, and at the same time, they can only hide their faces with their buttocks exposed. Why are you laughing? Do you think country life is not as interesting as city life? Yan Qingcheng suspected sensitively. In her life since childhood, there were not many things to be proud of and special. If there were, she would be particularly protective of them. Just like some children from poor families who don't have many toys, they cherish their tattered dolls, building blocks, and the like. No, you underestimate me. How come I haven't experienced rural life? In spring, there are wild vegetables and wild flowers everywhere on the roadside, in the mountains, and in the thorn bushes. In summer, I bathe in the pond, fish in the river, find crab holes, dig loaches, eels, rabbits, and pheasants are picked up after setting fire to the mountains in autumn. The fruits planted in the front and backyards of every house are also ripe. Winter is more fun. In the past, the snow in winter, even in southern Hunan, was like thick cotton. Being able to wear wellies, bringing charcoal and a small stove to school is also very fun. Lu Chang'an summed it up with some nostalgia. The joy of rural life is that the 4 seasons are different from time to time, but the various entertainment in the city are the same throughout the year. Except for the rise and fall of temperature, there is basically no sense of season. Yan Qingcheng didn't expect that Lu Chang'an seemed to have really experienced it, but there was something wrong with setting fire to the mountains to pick up rabbits and pheasants in autumn, right? What kind of lawless village is he in? But with Lu Chang'an's temperament, he might actually be able to do it. No, he said that the snow in previous winters could bury rain boots. In Yan Qingcheng's impression, there had never been such heavy snow in southern Hunan. The memory of such heavy snow only belongs to her mother's generation. Yan Qingcheng heard her mother say that universities were in turmoil in the 1980s. She thought of Professor Lu Jianxi and glanced at Lu Chang'an, expressionless. Setting fire to a mountain just to pick up rabbits and pheasants is not something that young people born in the 1990s or 2000s would do. Have you ever ridden a sheep? Some big sheep can actually be impressive, but little fat people and adults can't. Yan Qingcheng glanced at Zhou Dongdong, who was jumping lively not far away. Lu Chang'an touched his neck and shook his head. He had never ridden a sheep. He had ridden a sheep. Thinking of Zhu Huntang, Lu Chang'an waved to her bread man. A bread man who was pretending to choose a horse but refused to ride for a long time pointed at himself and walked over with his head held high. Brother, what's the matter? The expression on the bread man's face was incomprehensible. He didn't seem to feel that his identity was exposed, and he didn't understand what the stranger meant by suddenly waving at him. Is that horse prepared for you, Miss 3? Lu Chang'an asked. The bread man was stunned for a moment. He was so good at hiding his temperament and identity, but someone still found out that he was the third lady's man? Yes, you want to ride. The bread man immediately showed a warm smile, and it was obvious, so why should he pretend? Well, pick 2 beautiful horses and come over. It will look good for girls to ride on and take pictures. Lu Chang'an nodded. The bread man went immediately and picked out 2 tall horses, one black and one white, and handed them over to Lu Chang'an. He knew very well that this was an important person who could teach the third lady. He tried his best to meet Lu Chang'an's request, which was equivalent to satisfying the third lady's command. Yan Qingcheng is the tutor of the third lady. The combination of these 2 handsome men and beautiful women standing together is naturally matched with the dreamy combination of black and white horses, which is romantic. Feeling that the third lady seemed to be paying attention to this area, the bread man did not deliberately look back to see if the third lady noticed his attentiveness and carefulness, and quietly backed away. These 2 horses are really beautiful. Yan Qingcheng looked at these 2 tall horses and couldn't help but marvel. Are these so-called pedigree horses? It feels like these 2 horses are just like those seen in equestrian events at the Olympics. Not bad. Lu Chang'an nodded. Nowadays, many people start raising horses when they have some money, showing off their upper-class lifestyle. Some middle-class people also send their children to learn equestrian from an early age, and equestrian schools have become huge profits. Industry. Lu Chang'an took the saddles and put them on the 2 horses. These horses were not trained for business like the horses at the race course. For safety reasons, Lu Chang'an had to run with Yan Qingcheng. Yan Qingcheng had indeed ridden a horse before, and she did not show any expression of novelty and exploration. In addition, she was wearing a relatively loose cotton and linen jacket and wide leg pants today, which gave her a somewhat fairy-like and elegant feeling when riding. The 2 men started running on horseback. Rear. Zhu Huntang and Bai Hui looked at the venue and looked at each other. Bai Hui felt that the sky in front of him was filled with tea leaves, and the tea soup drenched him like rain. Zhu Huntang was trembling even more, his whole body was cold, he wished he could transform into a sheep, shouted and rushed to contradict her. What was the difference between her buying Durex and him using it with others? No, that's not right. What's the difference between a child who happily returns home from school only to find his parents gathered around another child, asking after him and saying that Zhu Huntang was actually picked up and this one is his biological child? I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 944. Chapter 915 Sobig Havlaoban. Many people have heard the two sentences the book has its own golden house, and the book has its own beauty like jade, which uses wealth and beauty to encourage everyone to study. These two sentences come from the poetry to encourage learning. In fact, the full text includes, thousands of bells of millet, horses like clusters, a house of gold, and a face like jade. In fact, it is more than that, there is also time in the book. Zhu Huntang once swore that anyone who dared to compete with his sister would have a goat head on her head, a goat's hoof step on her, and a goat's butt sit on her face. It feels like it has been a long time ago, but in fact it was just after the video call with Professor Lu Jianxi at noon yesterday. He swore like this, of course, because Zhu Huntang noticed some of Yan Qingqing's little thoughts. After yesterday's video ended, Zhu Huntang used the skillful Sichuan opera face-changing metaphor as a metaphor to suggest that by observing the other party's reaction, he realized that Yan Qingcheng had discovered that Professor Lu Jianxi might be Lu Chang'an. This is not a big deal at first. In today's society, even if you find that the world you live in is virtual, a small game created by some powerful force, a breeding base for aliens, or a paradise for gods, so what? If what you discover is the truth that most people are unwilling to accept, then the more hysterical you shout and the more desperate you are to expose it, the worse your fate will be, the possibility of being imprisoned in a mental hospital as a lunatic or even being wiped out. The bigger. Especially when you are in a humble position, you should silently forget the truth, go with the flow, and bury the truth in your heart. It is better than really wanting to die. When a powerful and resourceful fairy like Zhu Huntang discovered the shocking truth about Lu Chang'an, she couldn't make any waves, let alone Yan Qingcheng. Zhu Huntang doesn't care about Yan Qingcheng discovering the truth. What she cares about is that Yan Qingcheng finds out the truth and may compete with Zhu Huntang because her mother, Yan Hui, is favored by Professor Lu Jianxi. This is something Zhu Huntang cannot accept no matter what. At this moment, looking at Yan Qingcheng, who seems to be being taken care of by her old father and riding the horse, who is cautious, happy, and at ease, Zhu Huntang is no longer a white and pure Baa, she is turning black, and her whole body is turning black. Not a single part of the black part is white. Of course, it is impossible for Zhu Huntang to turn into a black girl in public, but she can jump up and down in anger, sit on the ground and kick her legs, roll around and slap the ground, and howl heartbreakingly, like she was beaten. It's like Zhou Dong Dong. Hui Hui, I feel dizzy and my heart is going to explode. Zhu Huntang pressed his chest, pointed forward angrily, and said to Bai Hui. Bai Hui's reaction was not as strong as Zhu Huntang's, and she was already mentally prepared. Bai Hui almost had a myocardial infarction when she saw Lu Chang'an serving Yan Qingcheng in the cafeteria that day. Even with Tong 11's explanation, after Bai Hui cleared up her doubts, she finally had a hidden worry in her heart. Now it has been proven that he was very wise in recruiting Tong 11. In the future, he must let Tong 11 pay more attention to Yan Qingcheng's study and life. After all, we are all friends. Seeing their backs now, the horse's tail was hanging down like a girl's long hair, swaying, and the horse's hooves made a clicking sound with their light and elegant steps, as if they were trampling on Bai Hui's heart tenderly and cruelly. The two of them looked so carefree and unrestrained, just like young gentlemen on spring outings in ancient times. The blooming spring flowers and the lingering smiles on their faces made people shout, "What a couple! Why are you dizzy? Ah, ah. Are you feeling unwell?" Bai Hui came back to his senses, holding Zhu Huntang's hand tightly, and felt a sense of cowardice in his heart. It turned out that what he wished for was already held by others. In the hand, painstaking efforts are not as good as the bastard mung bean. No. Calm down, I want to calm down. No situation can trouble me. Zhu Huntang and Bai Hui clasped their hands with firm eyes. Why? Bai Hui turned her head and cast her eyes slantingly on the moist spring mud. She couldn't help but think of Sushi's butterfly love flowers spring scenery and chanted, "The flowers have faded to red, green, and apricots are small. When the swallows fly, the green water is surrounded by people. There are few willow trees blowing on the branches. There are no fragrant grasses anywhere in the world. There are swings in the wall and roads outside the wall. Pedestrians outside the wall, the beautiful lady inside the wall laughs. The laughter gradually disappears and becomes quieter. Passionate people are annoyed by ruthlessness. You are out of your mind. You are still in the mood to recite such an unpopular poem at this time." Zhu Huntang looked at Bai Hui and suddenly realized that the joys and sorrows between the two people were not the same. Bai Hui just misunderstood, and Zhu Huntang was just a misunderstanding. He was really hurt. Is it unfamiliar? I still miss two poems by Nalan Zengd. Bai Hui felt the emotions in the poems and became even more sad. Girls all like Nalan Zengd's poems. Even though Bai Hui is a science student, she still has to learn Chinese. In the 3 years of high school, she has accumulated a lot of information on poems and songs. I especially like it. Lu Chang'an also liked poetry and songs. It seems that just a few days before the college entrance examination, he did not write the essay for the exam paper assignment. He copied the poem After the Chaos and Separation. Tian and Liu Yelang recalled the old travel book and presented it to Liang Zhe, the prefect of Jiangxia. Of course it's unfamiliar, I've never heard of it. Zhu Huntang waved his hand and said with some annoyance, "That's not the point now. Yan Qingcheng is trying to establish a good relationship with Lu Chang'an and gain a more important position in front of Professor Lu Jianxi. Wait, thus making her mother more favored than mine, further threatening my status as the first heir to the Kyushu Fenglai sword section." Even though he was in a state where his old friend's heart could easily change, but he knew that his old friend's heart could change easily, how deep the love was, and in the desolation of the sunset in the mountains and the drizzle of spring rain, Bai Hui was still baffled by Zhu Huntang's words. Zhu Huntang usually speaks in a messy manner. If she carefully considers the meaning of every word she says, she will be in trouble with herself. But at this moment, what Zhu Huntang said should be meaningful. Bai Hui couldn't help but listen carefully, but she still felt that she couldn't follow her logic. Zhu Huntang stared deeply at the backs of Lu Chang'an and Yan Qingcheng, and pulled Bai Hui aside. Bai Hui couldn't help but become nervous. Could it be that the relationship between Lu Chang'an and Yan Qingcheng had another secret, which seemed to have a greater impact on Zhu Huntang? Have you heard of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect? Bai Hui nodded repeatedly. Where did you hear that? Zhu Huntang was slightly surprised. You often say, what are you shouting in your dreams sometimes? When you become the sect leader of Zhu Fenglai sword sect, you will ride on Lu Chang'an's neck and dominate. Bai Hui didn't understand very well, but he could do it in Zhu Huntang. She felt her deep resentment towards Lu Chang'an in her sleep talk. I leaked important confidential information so easily. Sure enough, Cao said that I like my sister-in-law, but I don't allow others to sleep with me. It makes sense. Zhu Huntang didn't really believe it, but he still reminded himself to pay attention to the mysterious attributes of the sect, so that he could be more stylish, and then said, in short, you only need to know that the position of the master of the Zhu Fenglai sword sect represents a supreme power. Strong style. When did Cao say this? No, don't bother me. You mean Yan Qingchen is not pursuing Lu Chang'an, but just for the position of the leader of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect, Bai Hui said with a hint of uneasiness. Lucky asked. If Yan Qingchen was having relatively harmonious and friendly contact with Lu Chang'an because of other things, it would be like socializing, and the relationship on the scene could not be taken seriously. As for how Zhu Huntang's twisted historical and cultural knowledge came to be, Bai Hui no longer cares. If Zhu Huntang told a true and complete historical story seriously, it would be strange. Zhu Huntang snorted. Since Yan Qingchen was already thinking about Lu Chang'an being Professor Lu Jianxi, her focus was not on Lu Chang'an's personal charm, which would make her develop some love antibodies for Lu Chang'an. After all, love is dispensable. There are too many more important things in this world. Just like when Yan Qingchen discovered such a shocking truth, who else would go except for a love brain like Bai Hui? Thinking about love affairs? The whole person is caught up in the excitement and tension of pursuing the truth or taking advantage of it to cause trouble. Love is just a spice when you are full and have nothing to do and are extremely bored. Anyway, Yan Qingchen was not in the mood to fall in love with Lu Chang'an now. Zhu Huntang glanced at his good sister. Bai Hui didn't need to worry at all. After all, Zhu Huntang has a higher level of thinking. Bai Hui only knows how to dig with a small hoe. Once she finds that someone else's hoe can dig faster than her big hoe, she will go crazy. After a short period of contact, with my wise thinking and my ability to see through people's hearts, I have already discovered that Yan Qingchen is a very high-spirited girl. Of course, what such a girl pursues is not ordinary things. Zhu Huntang nodded. You don't find many respectable white-skinned people. When you introduce their identity, or when you go to investigate, they often say what nights, what conferences, what organizations, what nights and so on. That's a kind of force. Symbol. Zhu Huntang continued to explain. Are you saying that the Kyushu Fenglai sword sect is similar to the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller in the West? Bai Hui understood and felt that there should not be such a thing in China. Even if there is, it may not be very powerful at most. It is the product of a few wealthy people's expansion. Once it encounters the iron fist of the dictatorship, it disappears into thin air. One by one, it is too late to get rid of it. I can't say it's similar, I can only say it's more powerful and low-key, more like a superpower organization hidden in the world. Zhu Huntang pointed at himself, still unable to restrain his pride in Yan Jiang's mood. This fairy is among them. One member. Bai Hui looked at Zhu Huntang from head to toe twice before asking, Lu Chang'an may have superpowers. I believe it, but what superpowers do you have? The look in the eyes of the good sisters made Zhu Huntang want to turn into a sheep, but after all, Zhu Huntang is a person who does big things. How could he be so provoked that his true colors were revealed? Immediately, he used his extraordinary scheming and city government to suppress his impulse. Zhu Huntang pondered for a moment. At first, Qin Yinan and I asked Lu Chang'an to set up an organization for the Knights Alliance. Lu Chang'an named this organization the Zhuzhu Fenglai Sword Section. Later we learned that it has existed since ancient times and has a historical possibility. There is, by the way, Kyushu. It probably existed when Kyushu was born. You know what Kyushu is, right? I know, do you even have to say this? Why is Teacher Qin also involved? Bai Hui urged, and Zhu Huntang whetted her appetite. In short, the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect has been passed down for a long time, but the elders who suffered heavy losses in modern times are the sect leader Lu Chang'an, the elder Qin Yinan, and Zhu Huntang from our elite gang. Zhu Huntang said majestically. Bai Hui recited the titles of the 3 people and asked doubtfully, why are others the sect masters and elders, and you are just a gang member? The elites help the public, Zhu Huntang emphasized, adding an accent to the word elite. Isn't that different? There are 3 people, and you are still the lowest one. Zhu Huntang couldn't help but became a little angry. He pulled his twin ponytails and solemnly warned, only those with outstanding abilities can join this organization. My superpower is the ability to make money. I joined as a fat sheep and gradually upgraded to a saint. From the female protector to the sect protector, I will become the official heir of the Kyushu Fenglay sword sect. It sounds like you endured the humiliation, endured hardships, and worked hard to become stronger. Seeing Bai Hui's disapproving expression, Zhu Huntang snorted coldly. Now the people in the sect include Lu Chang'an, Shang Guandandan, Qin Yinan, Dong Dong, me, Li Hongfang, Lu Sin, Meibian Nuan, Yan Qing Cheng, Xiao Zhongqing, Dong Dong Mom and others are also in the inspection period and will join at any time. Bai Hui was shocked and jumped up and pointed at herself. I want to join in. Aren't you taking it seriously? Zhu Huntang continued to hum. Bai Hui grabbed Zhu Huntang's hand and shook it back and forth, humming and saying, am I wrong? This kind of organization needs to introduce people, right? You will be my introducer. Not only do I need to introduce people, I also need you to have superpowers. Zhu Huntang showed a joking smile on his face. I originally planned to introduce you to join based on your superpower of huge breasts. Bai Hui blushed with embarrassment, but she also knew that she had good looks. She basically looked like a girl, and she was quite proud of her. It was not an exaggeration to think of her as a superpower. So, Yan Qingcheng just wants to follow Lu Chang'an's path and join the Zhu Fenglay sword sect, so he threatens you. You are afraid that Yan Qingcheng will steal your position as heir. Bai Hui accepted Zhu Huntang's analysis and explanation. People are always more willing to believe some statements that are beneficial to themselves. It would be too cruel for Bai Hui to believe that Yan Qingcheng had received special treatment from Lu Chang'an. Just now, only the child Zhou Dongdong enjoyed the feeling of Lu Chang'an holding him and riding a horse, and everyone's horses were ordinary horses. Yan Qingcheng's horse was specially chosen. Maybe it was a kind of etiquette in the scene, just like when a family member eats home-cooked food, a big dish is prepared when guests come, it should be like this. Yes, Zhu Huntang nodded seriously. This was a more appropriate way of saying it. She couldn't directly say that Yan Qingcheng wanted to compete with her for her stepfather's love. Then it is quite appropriate to use the position of the head of the Zhu Fenglay sword sect to refer to stepfather's love. In fact, Zhu Huntang does not think that Yan Qingcheng is suitable to be the head of the Zhu Fenglay sword section. Yan Qing Orange can't even transform into a sheep. Anyway, it seems like Yan Qingcheng is not poaching me, no, poaching that guy from Shonan University, right? Bai Hui still asked for confirmation uneasily. It's long-winded, don't worry. Lu Chang'an is indeed a crazy person, but he didn't even play with bears, so how could he play with oranges? Zhu Huntang held Bai Hui's chest and put it in his hand to reassure her. The meaning of Bai Hui was so shy that she even forgot to open Zhu Huntang's palm. Zhu Huntang is the one who is really upset. Think about Yan Qingcheng who behaved like him in front of Lu Chang'an but was only spanked by him. Think about Yan Qingcheng climbing up and down Lu Chang'an like a monkey. Think about it. Yan Qingcheng was squirming in Lu Chang'an's arms like a maggot. Thinking about Yan Qingcheng punching, kicking, spitting on Lu Chang'an, biting and pulling on him, these things that only Zhu Huntang could do, made Yan Qingcheng. I can also make green oranges, so what? Could it be that Lu Chang'an will play with Yan Qingcheng in the future and greatly reduce the time he pays attention to Zhu Huntang? Zhu Huntang is completely unacceptable and wants to turn into a sheep and trample the entire Nanshan pasture. Let's also pull 2 horses and follow them. Zhu Huntang suddenly got the idea and pulled Bai Hui to ride the horse. The bread man saw the 2 ladies chatting there for a long time, and they probably wanted to ride a horse. Anyway, women are jealous creatures. She has to try what others like. Even the well-known scumbag will join in. I went to taste it, and in the end I was green and could still enjoy the feeling of sadness and affection. Did you go find those two horses just now and give them to them? Zhu Huntang looked at the remaining horses. One black and one white cannot be said to be the best, but when the two are paired together, they have a special temperament. Yes, the bread man smiled slightly and did not take any credit. It was his duty to serve the third lady's guests well. You go over there and do 100 push-ups. Zhu Huntang pointed to a patch of mud that was trampled by horses. Yes, although he didn't understand, the bread man still carried out the order resolutely and ran to do push-ups without hesitation. An order is an order, and you only need to execute it. Do you still need the third lady to explain to you why? Some people may say, the third lady wants you to die, why don't you just die? This is a bully, and a bully usually has a brain problem, but the third lady is not such a brainless bully. The horse has been harnessed. Bai Hui has just ridden it and climbed up smoothly. As soon as he held the reins, he saw Zhu Huntang had already driven the horse to catch up. She followed the horse's pace and sat up to beat the waves. She is clearly wearing a cute low skirt, but she has a dashing appearance, her long hair is flying in the wind, and she is elegant and confident. Zhu Huntang, who was originally thought to only take selfies but is not proficient in anything else, turns out to be more proficient in equestrian skills than anyone except Lu Chang'an. Oh, by the way, Zhu Huntang said that she has been close to animals since she was a child, and her physique may also be a bonus for horse riding. Bai Hui mounted the horse and followed, helplessly and slowly. She did not dare to try to make the horse speed up casually. Anyway, as long as she rode enough, if you are slow and cannot catch up with others, you will soon be caught up by others in a circle. Zhu Huntang quickly caught up with Yan Qingcheng and Lu Chang'an, who were jogging, and happened to hear Yan Qingcheng telling Lu Chang'an about riding sheep when they were children. Zhu Huntang was immediately furious, and now he wanted to ride on Zhu Huntang's head and dominate him. If we really want her to become the heir of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect, Zhu Huntang will not be stripped of her positions as saintess and protector and become an ordinary member of the gang again. It's possible that Zhu Huntang will be kicked out of the house. It's not impossible. Lu Chang'an, a bad old man, forgot about his old daughter after he got a new daughter. Maybe Yan Qingcheng and Yan Hui teamed up and obsessed Lu Chang'an. In the end, even Lu Shanchan's status was in jeopardy. For his own sake and for the sake of Qianqian, Zhu Huntang could not let Yan Qingcheng take away Lu Chang'an's favor. Zhu Huntang was a scheming and sophisticated little fairy, so of course she would not expose herself right away. When Lu Chang'an and Yan Qingcheng turned around, she calmly chanted, "The flowers have not withered yet. Swallows fly around the house and poop. The willow branches were blown away by the wind. There is grass everywhere in Nanshan. Sitting on a swing and flying from the wall to the outside. Pedestrians outside the wall saw him falling to the ground. One of the girls laughed. I smiled and felt that I was the clown, and I was so pretentious." After Zhu Huntang finished reciting the poem, he felt that he was indeed a genius. He had made some achievements in the field of changing ancient poetry into modern poetry. In short, it was better than the works written by 99% of modern poets. Be modest, no, that's 99.9%. Are you shocked by my talent? Zhu Huntang said, looking at the expressions of Yan Qingcheng and Lu Chang'an. Yan Qingcheng obviously did not understand the meaning of the poem, while Lu Chang'an had the same "what are you talking about" expression as always. Lu Chang'an stood stiff for 3 seconds, then nodded. If it weren't for the words "inside the wall, outside the wall, outside the wall, people outside the wall," who would have thought that this was Sushi's butterfly love flower spring scenery. Yan Qingcheng turned around in a funny way and recited the original text, "The flowers have faded and are red and green, and the apricots are small. When the swallows fly, the green water is surrounded by people. There are few willows blowing on the branches. There are no fragrant grasses anywhere in the world. Walls. There is a swing inside and a road outside the wall. Pedestrians outside the wall, The beautiful lady inside the wall laughs. The laughter gradually disappears and becomes quieter. Passionate but annoyed by ruthlessness. Comparing it with the original text, Lu Chang'an somewhat understood how Zhu Huntang came to have those distorted historical and cultural impressions. After hearing and reading some ancient poems or historical and cultural knowledge, she developed some self-righteous understandings. She would not seek verification or discuss with others. After having her own understanding, she regarded it as correct concepts or knowledge. Over time, the mind creates and understands things on its own, which are contrary to common sense. There is no grass anywhere in the world, but there are grasses everywhere in Nanshan. Yan Qingcheng couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, he only taught courses in the compulsory education stage, high school, and the first semester of freshman year. Lu Chang'an was in charge of cultural knowledge, poetry, etc. Is there anything wrong? Zhu Huntang glared. Although this was not his first time writing poetry, it was similar to his previous works, and they were both at the level of the Dynamite Literary Award. If it weren't for his indifference to fame and fortune, his unwillingness to promote his poems, and the prejudice of the Dynamite Award, Zhu Huntang would have won the award for his first poem when he was 12 years old. There is no way, for most people, some things are pursuits that cannot be achieved through lifelong efforts, but for Zhu Huntang, they are just a puppet. Although the change is ridiculous, it is somewhat understandable to change it like this after hearing someone else read it once. Lu Chang'an endured for a while, but still focused on encouragement. You must know that most people nowadays, if you read an ancient poem in front of them that they have not studied, they will only be able to understand 1 or 2 sentences. If you ask them to translate the full text sentence by sentence immediately, then the whole poem may not even have the same meaning. I don't remember a few words. Zhu Huntang is proud of the sheep. How do you know she changed it after hearing someone else read it once? Yan Qingcheng asked curiously. Lu Chang'an explained, I forced her to memorize the poem. After I read it once, she remembered it. When she was not so resistant, her learning ability was quite good. She should have only heard this poem by Sushi once. Because she won't listen to this kind of thing a second time, let alone learn to understand it after hearing it. That's the limit. Yan Qingcheng nodded suddenly. Zhu Huntang was like this when she was studying. She liked to be self-righteous, and it was very difficult for Yan Qingcheng to correct her understanding, such as the definition of rational numbers and irrational numbers. If no one went out of their way to correct her, then she would not verify it at all, check what was wrong with her understanding, and stick to Miss Takezan's principle of always being right. I was discussing ancient poetry with Bai Hui just now and listened to her read it once. Of course Zhu Huntang would not say that the two of them had just suffered a heavy blow, and the little fairy's young mind was almost broken. That would not give Yan Qingcheng too much prestige. Bai Hui also mentioned Nalanzingde, but I prefer Sushi and Sudongpo. Sushi and Sudongpo are the same person. Lu Chang'an sighed. Seeing Yan Qingcheng holding back her laughter, Zhu Huntang was furious. Why would one person have 2 names? But, if Zhu Huntang encounters this Dongpo meathead, he will have to pull his beard. Could it be that Sushi and Sudongpo are actually just the vests of the old man? Just like Lu Jianxi and Lu Chang'an, this is probably the case. Otherwise, how could Zhu Huntang feel like pulling his beard? Aren't you having fun with Shang Guandandan and the others? Why did you suddenly come over to ride a horse? Lu Chang'an was just about to chat with Yan Qingcheng alone to show his closeness, when Zhu Huntang came to make trouble. Zhu Huntang remembered the business and quickly pulled the horse to a stop before driving the horse to squeeze in between Yan Qingcheng and Lu Chang'an, separating Lu Chang'an and Yan Qingcheng. Bai Hui from behind saw the scene and cheered for Zhu Huntang. I'm here to read a poem to you. Is there any reward? Zhu Huntang knows that during the holidays, the children at home will be rewarded after performing performances, at least a few hundred words of praise. I will reward you for adapting 10 more poems. Lu Chang'an's requirements are already infinitely low. Even if she understands the wrong adaptation, she has learned something, right? Just like when she mistakenly believed that Jinke stabbed Prince Dan 3 times, it was a mistake. At least she knew the characters and events in the historical story. If Lu Chang'an slowly corrected it, she must have already understood the story of Jinke's assassination of the king of Qin. Basically correct understanding. Adaptation is actually overkill for me. I'll just make an original one. It's just one original thing. I originally planned to write a poem for you. Zhu Huntang waved his hand. Adaptation is not interesting. Okay, Lu Chang'an also became interested. Having just performed a poem reading program, and now he has agreed to write poems for Lu Chang'an, Zhu Huntang felt that he was qualified to act coquettishly and make demands. He pointed at Lu Chang'an's horse coquettishly, "I want you to take me riding." "Come on." Lu Chang'an prepared to hold the horse. However, Zhu Huntang held down the saddle and stood up from her own horse. Under Yan Qingqing's surprised and worried eyes, she actually jumped directly to Lu Chang'an. Isn't she afraid of death? She wasn't wearing any helmet or protective gear. Fortunately, Lu Chang'an reached out and caught Zhu Huntang, put her in front of him, and the two of them rode together. "Drive," Zhu Huntang shouted proudly after sitting down. Her original horse stopped for 2 steps and then trotted to keep up. "Aren't you afraid of danger?" Yan Qingcheng asked fearfully, feeling that Zhu Huntang's action just now was the kind of action only people from the provinces where they went to school to ride horses would dare to do. "What's there to be afraid of? He will catch me anyway, right?" Zhu Huntang looked back at Lu Chang'an and wanted to hug Lu Chang'an with his backhand, and then bite him to show that he could attack him. Doing whatever he wants makes Yan Qingcheng jealous. Yan Qingcheng could only shake her head. Zhu Huntang's trust in Lu Chang'an is really a bit like a daughter's trust in her father. Sure enough, Lu Chang'an is Professor Lu Jianxi. Otherwise, how can people of the same age give people the feeling of father and daughter? This is a conjecture that Yan Qingcheng actually finds difficult to accept. If Lu Chang'an is Professor Lu Jianxi, and he is his mother's lover, how should she face him? Classmate? Uncle? Even stepfather? Of course, someone who is not married cannot be considered a stepfather, but an elder who has an ambiguous relationship with his mother is also his classmate. What is this? Yan Qingqing's mind was a little confused, and she could only force herself not to think too much. She was troubled by absurd conjectures without evidence. She did not have such luxury leisure time. This was something that only an idle young lady like Zhu Huntang was qualified to do. Son. Oh, and there is also the love brain in the back. She and Lu Chang'an were riding horses just now. There must have been several dramas in the small theater in Bai Hui's mind. Zhu Huntang was probably instigated by her to cause trouble. Haha, if you have the ability, go and provoke the rightful master. What's the point of asking me? For a moment, Yan Qingcheng hoped that her suspicion was true. When Bai Hui knew that she had actually been trying to be Zhu Huntang's stepmother, her reaction would be wonderful. But that's not necessarily the case. Maybe she will find it interesting that you are my best friend and I am your stepmother. After all, she is a two-dimensional girl with a certain brain. After spending a whole day playing at various attractions in Nanshan Ranch, the group, including Zhu Huntang, rushed back to Junxia in the afternoon. Tomorrow is Monday, and Yan Qingcheng and Bai Hui also have to go back to class. Everyone was riding Zhu Huntang's flagship helicopter. It was not the flagship of Zhu Huntang's entire fleet, but the flagship of the helicopter fleet. It was very spacious. Even though the bedrooms took up most of the space, the public area allowed everyone to sit down loosely and casually. Still no problem. Shang Guandandan gave Zhu Huntang the remade jade seals of Princess of Colorful Glaze and Pure White Wonderland and Void-Cutting Dragon Flame Immortal to Zhu Huntang, and warned Lu Chang'an not to mess around again. This was a very formal seal, which represented with the majesty and identity of the royal family. Feeling that he had the support of his godmother, Zhu Huntang stood tall and proud, as if the prince had ascended the throne. He took the jade seal and stamped several seals on Lu Chang'an's arms and calves. Zhou Dongdong saw this and strongly requested to stamp many seals on his body. But Zhou Shuling stopped him, and Zhou Dongdong was only allowed to put one on his belly. Zhou Dongdong was a little unhappy when he saw that brother Chang'an had many more people than him, and felt that he was not as powerful as brother Chang'an. Yan Qingcheng was watching their fuss, and found that Zhu Huntang, Zhou Dongdong, and Lu Chang'an had similar relationships with each other as father and daughter, even though Zhu Huntang was called brother Lu, Lu Chang'an, and Zhou Dongdong. It's brother Chang'an. Zhou Shuling was like a quiet and well-behaved little daughter-in-law, always watching Zhou Dongdong and Lu Chang'an play around with soft eyes, which did not make Yan Qingcheng think too much. Because Yan Qingcheng is also a single-parent family, Yan Qingcheng can understand very well. If she had such a substitute role of father during her growth stage, like Zhou Dongdong, her mother's eyes would often be the same. Bai Hui, who is sitting there imitating Zhou Shuling's quiet and well-behaved posture, still gives people the feeling of green tea, exuding the temperament of I am a professional when I am a mistress. Anyway, the strangest one in the group was Shang Guandandan. She seemed to have drunk some wine. She was staring blankly at the big thermos bottle, her little body was swaying, and from time to time she would say a few words like an old lady enjoying family happiness. If I'm the only normal person here. Yan Qingcheng reminded herself that she really didn't want to fully integrate into this group of people. She had a sense of crisis and felt that if she fully integrated into their circle, her role might be more like that of Bai Fen. There is no reason, just to be so worried. Maybe he still got some contamination from the competition with Bai Hui. After returning to Junsha, she needs to adjust her mentality. The daily life of an ordinary female college student is the state that Yan Qingcheng should return to. She should also pay less attention to Bai Fen. She only occasionally attacks Bai Fen, which makes Yan Qingcheng feel like she is his words and deeds are stained with some tea flavor. So when Zhu Huntang suggested playing a game of landlords, where the loser would be taped, Yan Qingcheng sat at the edge despite finding it interesting, showing an attitude of not wanting to participate. The last people to participate in the game were Zhu Huntang, Bai Hui, and Zhou Shuling. Lu Chang'an served as the supervisor and was responsible for wrapping the tape. Whoever lost would do it. Zhu Huntang is not very good at playing, he just likes to rob landlords, and even sneaks in to steal cards and change cards by any means. Without Lu Chang'an as supervision, this card cannot be played. She once lost to Lu Chang'an and Qin Yinan, but she always thought that it was a gang of gangsters who bullied her, and it was not that there was a problem with her poker skills, so she was worried about it. Every time she proposed to play landlord, she had to play with tape, hoping that one day she could revenge, or transfer the shame onto someone else. Bai Hui felt that Zhu Huntang and Zhou Shuling didn't play cards very much at first glance, but Bai Hui would always win a little money and be full of confidence when playing cards at relatives' gatherings during New Year's and holidays, and if she lost, she would I hope Lu Chang'an binds her feet with a sense of ritual, just like the husbands of ancient women playing with their 3-inch golden lotus, which is perverted and lustful. Zhou Shuling has already thought of a way to become invincible. If she loses, she will contribute Zhou Dongdong as a substitute and entangle Zhou Dongdong. Anyway, this stupid child will find it fun. Shang Guan fell asleep. At the beginning of the first round, Zhu Huntang asked to add a one-time rule, which allowed 3 players and 1 dragon. Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling strongly opposed it, but Zhu Huntang was a landlord, so she directly picked out 888 at 2345 in the first round. You're not a 3-zone dragon, Zhou Shuling was dumbfounded. She had never seen anyone produce a dragon like at 2345. Lu Chang'an, take care of her, Bai Hui nudged Lu Chang'an coquettishly. She knew that only Lu Chang'an could control Zhu Huntang, otherwise Zhu Huntang would be like this when playing cards and would not be able to play with her. Take it back and come out again. Lu Chang'an had learned before that Zhu Huntang liked to cheat when playing cards. The cards are played, the water is poured out. I have already said that this is a one-time use, and there will be no such rule anymore. Zhu Huntang refused. If you want it, or not, I will play another 3 and 4, because 3 and 4 are both smaller than 5, so they are approximately equal to a pair. You can put out a pair of 4 or a pair of 5. Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling opened their mouths slightly, and they said so. Lu Chang'an took over Zhu Huntang's cards and played again. However, her cards were too bad and she always lost no matter how she played. Lu Chang'an had nothing to do. In the end, Bai Hui and Zhou Shuling won. I thought you could win. Zhu Huntang just handed the cards to Lu Chang'an without resisting. Seeing that he actually lost, he was immediately disappointed. Lu Chang'an picked up the tape and wrapped it around Zhu Huntang's calf. Zhu Huntang scratched and scratched at Lu Chang'an. He stole her cards and lost, but she was the one who was punished in the end. With this experience, Zhu Huntang became more honest at the beginning of the second round. He did not make temporary rules and just stretched his neck left and right to look at other people's cards. After playing for more than an hour, Bai Hui, Zhu Huntang, and Zhou Shuling were all wrapped with tape. Because Zhou Shuling's request to use Zhou Dongdong as a substitute was rejected, but Zhou Dongdong saw that they were wrapped with tape and strongly asked Brother Chang'an, "Wrap yourself around." Entering Zhengzhakeng district, the card game stopped. Everyone was tearing off the tapes happily and taking ugly photos of each other. Shang Guandandan also woke up rubbing his stomach. It was almost time to eat. The helicopter stopped on the top floor, and not only Secretary Jin but also Zhong Qing were greeted by the tarmac. The group got off the plane, and the trailer grabbed the front tire of the helicopter and dragged the helicopter into the hangar for maintenance. Dinner was already prepared in the kitchen. After Lu Chang'an finished eating here, he rushed to Lushan without stopping, preparing to meet Qinyan and to attend a training class for pregnant women. Zhong Qing also told him good news, using Mirage's hallucination ability. Combined with the latest AI technology, the virtual world project that has been ongoing in the underground base has been improved. I hope Lu Chang'an can experience it when he has time. Lu Chang'an was always very enthusiastic about new technologies and immediately agreed. However, his sister's appointment was not satisfactory. He did not want to see Qinyan touching her belly and looking like she was pregnant and had been ruthlessly abandoned. Thank you again to the boss of Swastika Ghost Dance 17 Swastika for your generous reward. I am also sorry that the 10,000 word chapter was only updated today. Thank you everyone for your generous tips, especially those who tip the characters. Is there still a boss? Updates will be released within 3 days. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 945. Zhong Qing told Lu Chang'an about the virtual world project in the car. She was going to the underground base to follow the progress of the project and her robot clone Swollen Chirp. Oh, no, Zhong Chirp. Still wrong, it's Zhong's hiking, nicknamed Gigi. As the car drove out of the underground garage, Zhong Qing saw a baker in a suit pushing a cart of sheep dung balls to Lu Chang'an's home. Zhong Qing is from Juncha and knows everything about what happened at Nanshan Ranch. The bread man is a personal bodyguard under the direct command of Zhu Huntang, but of course there are Zonking's cronies among them, let alone the Zhu family. Even in Baojun this is not the case. Even the company that is considered the core industry of the Zhu family is full of factions, and it is difficult to get things done without cultivating some cronies. In the past, Zhong Qing only listened to the third wife's orders and didn't think anything of it. When he started to act alone, he realized that there was no one under him, so he couldn't do anything and was easily ignored. Fortunately, she has always been favored by the third wife. If she shows off a little bit, shrewd people who are good at observing words and emotions will naturally come to her. Now she has a group of people who can be used, so that she will not be unable to control the situation and can only be used as a vase. I heard that you and Miss San picked up the sheep dung balls after working hard in the middle of the night. After Zhongqing heard about this, he laughed so hard that his stomach hurt. Who would have thought that Miss Susan, who was pampered and had no fingers in the spring water, would you do such a thing? Only Lu Chang'an can do it. Zhu Huntang has been eaten by Lu Chang'an since the very first time he met him. If Zhu Huntang is willing to do this with him, it is definitely impossible. Most likely, he is unable to resist. Work is the most glorious thing, but you just lack the training for physical labor. Lu Chang'an looked at Zhongqing and said. Zhongqing was wearing a light shirt with a silk texture today. It was vaguely visible that her figure was wrapped in a soft bottoming shirt. A round pearl necklace hung on her chest, embellishing the whiteness of her skin. Her slender waist was straight, and her sitting posture allowed her hips to line up. The outward expansion appears fuller. An equilateral triangle is cut out on the leg side of the hip-hugging skirt. Because of the sitting position, the hem of the skirt shrinks, revealing the delicate lace trim of stockings and a tight and flesh-hugging suspender belt in the triangle position. Then you mean that I lack glory? Zhongqing understood deeply. Yes, in addition to glory in the general sense. For women, a beautiful face, fair and pink complexion, tight and elastic skin, and charming body lines are also honors that they are proud of. Lu Chang'an nodded. There are actually very few women who have all the glory. Just talking about skin color, not many people can satisfy this point. Lu Chang'an just likes fair and pink skin, and is not interested in healthy wheat color, bronze color, or sunburn color. Fair and pink skin is not similar to the hairless pig skin in Europe and America. This kind of fair and pink skin is generally only found in East Asian women. Zhongqing wanted to stop the car and argue with him carefully, asking him to take a closer look. Is her face disgraceful, her skin disgraceful, or her figure he doesn't like? She knew very well that all Lu Chang'an's contacts were beauties. This was not an accidental phenomenon, but a phenomenon of choice. If a person was not beautiful, he would have no interest in communicating with them. Zhongqing and Lu Chang'an often have various exchanges, which is relatively frequent. They can also meet up for drinks and barbecues at any time. It doesn't matter if they open a room in a hotel and sit and chat together. It's not because she can catch his eye. If she really lacked these honors, she might not get through to him even if she called him 100 times, let alone patiently sending her back when she was drunk. Tell me clearly, what are you dissatisfied with me about? Zhongqing still didn't put the brakes on. She was no longer a little girl. Maturity and rationality were one of the charms of a working woman like her. Lu Chang'an smiled and said, not really. I just think you are too delicate. You should do some physical work, move bricks, mix cement, dig soil, and so on. Just like your third wife, you are not stained. Fireworks. Under normal circumstances, Zhongqing feels that saying that she is the same as the third wife is the highest compliment. That is her idol and the ideal image of women in her mind. Lu Chang'an said this with too much personal bias, but when one person's bias becomes a point of view that others care about, it becomes the standard. Just like the public's current requirements for women's body shape are completely dominated by men. No matter what women say about fitness, weight loss, and maintaining a good figure to please themselves, in fact, it is the standard of male aesthetics that has been imperceptibly influenced by men. If we really want to follow natural standards, that is strong and strong. Okay, if I have time someday, I'll go pick up sheep dung balls with you. Zhongqing didn't reject it very much. Zhu Huntang can do it, so of course she can do it too. Let's put it this way, you look like flowers in a greenhouse. They are very delicate and beautiful, but compared with those flowers growing naturally in the wild, they just feel a little less flavorful. Lu Chang'an thought of a more appropriate metaphor, just like some flowers that grow naturally in the wild. Flower arrangement enthusiasts are not willing to buy flowers in flower shops and like to go to the wild to pick the flowers and plants they need. Domestic flowers are not as fragrant as wild flowers. I am a domestic flower that is waiting to be picked, so there is no challenge and no sense of accomplishment. It is not as tempting as the thorny ones outside. I wonder how many wild flowers have been picked by butterflies and wild bees. Zhongqing's cheeks smiled slightly. Red and slightly angry. In fact, she is not the flower of Lu Chang'an's family, but with the hint of the third wife, she leads the task of seducing Lu Chang'an at all costs. She has also given Lu Chang'an many opportunities. It is really a matter of asking and waiting to be picked. As long as he shows a little bit of meaning, that's enough. Such a woman is no challenge to men. If an ordinary man, like Zhongqing, was like this, he would have been a subordinate for a long time. But for Lu Chang'an, a flower concubine, perhaps the challenge of a woman is more important to him, rather than focusing on the woman's appearance and figure. Your point of view is not suitable between you and me, but what you said is not wrong. Males have the natural instinct to seek more mates and leave offspring. You see, the bees picking flowers are all male, right? Lu Chang'an looked at it, he said while looking at Zongqing's long legs. He was not attracted by the woman's slender legs, but by the light dark golden flower and bee patterns on the ankles of Zongqing's stockings. Zhongqing is a woman who can always add some provocative little elements to her professional attire. It's great to be a man, and I can say that it's my nature to be flirtatious. Zhongqing shook his head. Many girls dreamed that they could grow up one day when they were young, but as they grow up, they gradually accept the reality that they can't. It may not be too sad. Women also have their own nature. Nature is an instinct, which is a very interesting thing. Lu Chang'an has observed the nature of many animals. Sometimes he sees some interesting animals and he can observe their tribes from birth to death. There are many ways to purely observe their life instead of guiding and interfering with their life process in the natural environment. Such as transforming into a member of their tribe, such as lying in a tall and healthy tree nearby for decades. The simplest thing is to stand there motionless. After a while, the animals will regard him as a part of the natural environment, no different from flowers, plants, stones, and trees, and lie in his shadow, or climb on top of his head to poop. To realize Zhu Huntang's dreamed ideal. Women are more interesting animals than ordinary animals. Lu Chang'an's chosen observation method is to enter their hearts and bodies, thereby appreciating their souls. Then tell me, what is the nature of a woman? Can she also describe her loveliness as romantic like a man, and feel complacent as if she has achieved something? Zhongqing said while looking ahead. She seems to have remembered something that triggered her emotions. From what Lu Chang'an knew about her, it seemed that she had not met any romantic man, but it was probably something that happened in her childhood. Your father was burned to ashes in a drunk driving accident. Is this the kind of man you are? Lu Chang'an asked directly without hesitation. The person who makes Zhongqing care about her and make her emotions fluctuate is probably the man who has brought a shadow to her childhood. Some people's childhood can be cured in a lifetime, while some people's childhood needs a lifetime to heal. Zhongqing undoubtedly belongs to the latter. Judging from Zhongqing's attitude towards Lu Chang'an, she is not the kind of person who cannot accept a man's romance at all. She probably just couldn't accept a man like her father who beat his wife at home and was romantically involved at home. He didn't have much ability, and he favored sons over daughters, as if there was something worth inheriting from his own family. Zhongqing nodded. She was not surprised that he could see her thoughts so easily. The third wife also had the ability to see through people's hearts, let alone the man she had worked so hard to get. Actually, you can accept me as your godfather. I have a lot of fatherly love and I am very good at healing people's hearts. After knowing me, Many unfortunate people will become happy and feel warmth, thus forgetting their misfortunes and becoming better. You have to be smart, brave, positive, and sunny, Lu Chang'an said seriously. Throughout the ages, Lu Chang'an has been the godfather of countless people, and has had countless godsons and goddaughters. He has made many achievements in the profession of godfather, which is rich in meaning and has great responsibilities. Zhongqing finally couldn't help but hit the brakes, parked the car on the side of the road, and looked at Lu Chang'an in confusion. What are you doing? Are you always rejecting women who are interested in you like this? I've heard of refusals at the same time. You are a good person, but I have never heard of this kind of rejection. I can't accept you, but I can be your godfather. Zhongqing did not regard Lu Chang'an as a college student and felt that his age was inappropriate for him to be a godfather. Instead, he made such a suggestion when he knew that she had a crush on him. This was clearly to remind her that she did not chance. After Zhongqing had a drink with Lu Chang'an, she once asked him if he believed there were immortal people in the world. She just got some incredible truths about the world from the third wife that day. Zhongqing also understood then, could the third wife, a special person like her, fall in love with an ordinary person? She had not asked Lu Chang'an for confirmation, but she had already confirmed his specialness. If I hadn't sent him a photo of him in his pajamas, and half-truthfully said that I wanted to ask him for advice on Fang Zhongshu, it would actually be great to have such a person as my godfather. After all, he himself is Zhu Huntang's lap. He is also the man that the third wife longs for. After some ambiguous conversations and contacts, he said he wanted her to recognize him as her godfather, which was a bit shameful for a woman. When I write about Zhongqing, I think of Zhong Huiyu. When I talk about Zhong Huiyu, I will recommend a novel Sister Falling in Love with Me to everyone. When I think of Zhong Huiyu, I want to be the boss. Hey. All kinds of requests. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 946. It is said that men like to be teachers and teach others, but there are also some men who like to be fathers and find a place to put their father's love overflowing. The words are serious words, but there are always people who understand some other meanings, reflecting certain social phenomena, which fully reflects the profoundness of language. Being able to adapt with the progress of the times and giving birth to richer connotations is an enduring text, a symbol of excellence and never falling behind. Endurance often means truth, and the power of truth lies in the fact that it is a rule, and the power of rules is supremely powerful in all planes. Therefore, in many fantasy novels, simple chanting in Chinese can activate the power of heaven and earth and become the protagonist's capital to dominate a different world. This is not a random fabrication, it is well founded. Lu Chang'an is a serious person, so he is easy to be a father. This is just a way to simplify the ambiguous or vague relationship. This is just like how he adopted many little girls in the past because of his kindness. When these little girls grew up, they inevitably developed admiration for their gentle, graceful, and handsome adopters. In the era of feudal society, the age gap was not a problem at all. Many literati and poets in their 70s and 80s still had love with teenage girls, and wrote many poems and songs to lament the warm and passionate relationship between them. Passionate love. These ordinary men were treated like this, let alone him. He protected himself from wind and rain, provided food, clothing, housing, and transportation, taught poetry and etiquette, and allowed children who might have lived in Gulen or even starved to death on the roadside to grow up. They inevitably developed a love for him. Who can blame him? What's the problem? At this time, he thought of a way to recruit them into the Zhu Fenglai sword sect as the sect leader, simplifying the relationship to that of sect leader and disciple, instead of blindly moving them into the room and making love all day long. You know the taste of meat, but you don't know that the infinite beauty of the world is waiting for everyone to explore. Nowadays, the meaning of existence of Zhu Fenglai sword sect is different from that in the past. Lu Chang'an has not adopted so many beautiful girls that there is nowhere to place them. If he wants to use a sect to place them, naturally he cannot recruit Zhongqing into Zhou casually. Wind and Thunder Sword Gate. What a warm and harmonious relationship between godfather and goddaughter. Lu Chang'an also considered Zhongqing's lack of fatherly love when he was young, so he made such an exquisite arrangement, but she couldn't understand it. It was really a pity. Since she had misunderstood and refused, Lu Chang'an could not force himself to be a father. He just tried to persuade her, life is very long. It is not only the love between children and the spring flowers, the autumn moon, but also the validity period of my promise. Please consider it slowly. Zhongqing was too lazy to think about it. She took her mobile phone and searched for an old meme. In 2012, a model posted on Weibo and said, "There is a kid who won't let me wear mini skirts anymore." Later she said, "Kid. Actually, he's her godfather." The model explained on Weibo that the mini skirt was a Chi 13 mini skirt, so that some sellers later labeled the mini skirt godfather's favorite in order to attract more customers. This kind of label has of course been consciously purified by major shopping websites, and they have replaced it with more connotative labels such as outdoor and fielding. Zhongqing showed this to Lu Chang'an, "This kind of godfather. Are you showing your age? This happened a long time ago. You should have been in Taiwan at that time. How could you pay attention to the internet hotspots in the mainland?" Lu Chang'an thought about it for a moment. Even from the perspective of ordinary people, only 6 years have passed since 2012, but it feels a bit old and stale. There have been too many new things born in these years. As long as you recall and compare a little, you will feel the ever-changing feeling. Marvel. In fact, the world is changing all the time, but this country is changing particularly fast. The most important thing is that this kind of change is not in a laboratory, nor is it the kind of change that ordinary people can't touch or understand, but it can be seen, experienced, and felt in life. Not every country is like this. For example, in Taiwan, where Zhongqing grew up, the high-speed rail from the airport to the city can be built for 20 years. It is very difficult to feel the rapid development. The third wife said that if you want to escape the various influences brought by the narrow island environment, you must pay attention to the wider world and the more colorful and diversified social environment. It is impossible for people not to be exposed to various languages every day. Information and emotions are influenced by the spirit, but you can choose what kind of comprehensive environment and spirit will influence you. Zhongqing explained, "Of course, it is inevitable that there will be junk culture and vulgarity in any environment. Shallow and happy-go-lucky stuff." Zhongqing admired the third wife's vision and structure very much. What he learned from her was something that could not be learned at school or in the classroom, or that others knew clearly but could not learn due to political environment, social pressure, etc. Things to say to students. Just like many teachers in Taiwan, they will tell students they know each other privately that they should go to the mainland for development, but it is very risky to say this directly in class. By focusing on all aspects of the mainland, your horizons will be much broader, and your perspectives and thoughts will become more grand and long-term without realizing it. Regardless of the current information network, people are influenced by information and are no longer restricted by geographical location. But in fact, if we don't deliberately jump out, the geographical location restrictions still have a lot of impact. This is what people are born with. Well, and the question of self-choice to jump out or stay in the comfort zone. It seems like she doesn't understand the truth, so how can she educate a sheep like Zhu Huntang? Lu Chang'an sighed lightly. The only explanation is that Su Mei was poisoned by happy education, and in her eyes, Zhu Huntang is still in the infant stage. Only this makes sense, otherwise with Su Mei's background, how could she educate Zhu Huntang to be like this? You must know that the rich ladies who were cultivated by Su Mei's family environment, in addition to their own extremely excellent qualities, they are also often good at cultivating their next generation. Just look for any masters from modern and famous families. Looking through their memoirs, you will find that many of their mothers had a background like Sume. Or perhaps Sume feels that since she was responsible for the birth, it is his business to educate her? Zhongqing chuckled, then became serious again. Education cannot be generalized between people. You can't always use the template of ordinary people who are hard-working, diligent, and studious to ask the third lady. I think the third lady has the genes of a natural excellent leader. She is active and good at thinking outside the inertial mode, and is very suitable for taking the helm on general directions and key issues. She just lacks practical opportunities and growth experience. Lu Chang'an nodded. What Zhongqing said did make sense. But then his cell phone rang and he received many photos from Zhu Huntang. After Lu Chang'an and Zhongqing left, Zhou Shuling went to the store where she left for 2 days to check on the situation. Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong, 2 idle little animals, stayed to play with Zhu Huntang. In the photos, Zhu Huntang is wearing her doll suit called Golden War and holding an alpaca named Long Aotian in her hand. Shang Guandandan is also wearing a sheep doll suit and holding an alpaca in her hand. The little lamb whose ears were hairy was burnt for some unknown reason. Zhou Dongdong was wearing the smallest doll suit and holding Lu Sin in his hand. Lu Sin was wearing a pet costume made of wool. It was obviously a black animal. The dog was literally dressed up as a black goat. Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong were quite cute in their clothes, but when he saw Zhu Huntang, Lu Chang'an wanted to scold her, but he didn't curse even though he opened his mouth, because she couldn't hear them anyway. Scolding has no effect. Maybe it would make her even more excited, and Lu Chang'an, who was furious, felt very accomplished. I can only think that at least she didn't turn into a sheep and be held in someone's hand. That's fine. In the photo, the 3 of them are dressed like this, each holding a pet while walking in the mall. Lu Sin's big body is wearing a cute goat costume, which looks weird. Zhu Huntang's alpaca and Shang Guandandan's little lamb are quite acceptable. Welcome, there are customers caressing you. In one photo, Long Aotian spits at a customer. Shang Guandandan's little lamb has a bit of Zhu Huntang's style, but the small one is arrogant, dominating customers, staff, and trash cans. But it doesn't look like a stress reaction. In one photo, it is calmly chewing expensive fruits in the supermarket. Lu Sin stood loyally next to Zhou Dongdong, habitually protecting his little master. Others could see that it was actually a fierce dog with a strong physique and would not dare to approach. Zhongqing stretched his head to look, and Lu Chang'an quickly closed the photo. Although it made no sense, what was Zhu Huntang like that Zhongqing hadn't seen before? Who sent you the photo? Zhongqing smiled ambiguously. She had sent Lu Chang'an a pajama photo, so it was inevitable that she would always think about it. She didn't see the specific content of the photo, but the color was bright and it seemed to be all kinds of white flesh. Nothing, let's drive. Lu Chang'an looked at the watch in the car. I'm in a hurry. Zhongqing nodded, and quickly bought a few pairs of mini skirts and pants with strange zipper positions on the shopping website, which finally concluded today's Godfather incident. After sending Lu Chang'an to the parking lot on the top of the mountain, Zhongqing said that when the mini-skirt arrived, he might take a selfie and send it to his godfather, and then drove away. Lu Chang'an shook his head gently. Mature women are always so direct and bold when flirting. Could it be that Bai Hui's recent clumsy tricks were all learned from Zhongqing? Considering that he and Zhongqing had a conversation about playing both domestic and wildflowers, Lu Chang'an took advantage of the darkness and jumped from the top of the mountain to the valley on the other side to pick flowers from the wedding photography garden. The entire commercial development of Lushan is not a wonderful and successful case. It is a bit messy and random. After the wedding photography park was poorly managed and abandoned, Lu Chang'an and Qinyanan fought in the wild here and killed a pair of black and white Oreos. At that time, there was no. It is packed in clay pots and buried everywhere, and is currently in the process of biodegradation. The surrounding flowers and plants have also absorbed nutrients and grown more lush. Maybe one day they will bloom flowers that look like human faces, which is fascinating. There is a private restaurant in the middle of the valley. This is the fly restaurant where Zhu Huntang sacrificed himself to dine. Lu Chang'an followed Professor Lu to eat and drink there. After picking some flowers, Lu Chang'an vaguely saw a strange beast that had recovered its huge figure and passed through the forest under the cover of darkness. It was probably going to the air raid shelter at the other end of the valley. Lu Chang'an didn't pay much attention and left after picking the flowers. Back downstairs at Qin Yinan's house again, Yan Qingcheng came to pick up Yan Hui. It was a rare visit to Juncha for my mother to stay for a while, but Yan Qingcheng had to spend several days to accompany her to Nanshan Ranch because of Zhu Huntang's incident. Although her mother didn't have any objections, Yan Qingcheng still felt that it was business to spend more time with her mother, so she just came back and came here to pick her mother up for dinner. It just so happened that Yan Hui also said that teacher Qin had something to go out tonight, and Professor Lu seemed to have something too, so no one was with Yan Hui. "Chinzi, Aunt Yan, have you eaten?" Yan Qingcheng's classmate Lu Chang'an greeted the two of them warmly and friendly. Yan Qingcheng nodded and shook her head. Ever since she began to suspect that Lu Chang'an was Professor Lu Jianxi, Yan Qingcheng always felt that something was wrong when looking at Lu Chang'an. What's more, when Lu Chang'an appeared in front of his mother, Yan Qingcheng couldn't help but wonder, what would Lu Chang'an, who looked like a junior, be thinking in his heart? How did he stay so calm? It is said that a suspicious neighbor steals an axe. When you have doubts in your heart, you always feel that the other person has flaws and problems everywhere. But Yan Qingcheng is looking at Lu Chang'an now. Even though she is full of doubts, Lu Chang'an's performance does not have any flaws or problems. Question. His completely normal behavior and the calm and slightly respectful attitude of his elders even made Yan Qingcheng wonder if he was overthinking it. "I'm getting ready to eat." You are Professor Liu's son, Lu Chang'an, right? This is the first time Yan Hui has seen this young man whose name he has admired for a long time. Lu Chang'an, whom she had heard from her daughter, was an academic master. He was admitted to Xiongnan University with one of the best grades in the whole of southern Hunan. After enrolling, he did not see any further operations in the field of study. Instead, he was playing. People became famous and had a bad influence, but they were saved by the counselor who was his cousin. Yan Hui has had more contact with Qin Yinan, and has a vague understanding of Qin Yinan's identity and background. Let alone beating people, there are very, very few bad deeds that can make Qin Yinan unable to survive. But Yan Hui doesn't just follow the wind and rain. A girl's mind is very complex at this age, and her personal impression cannot be accurate, let alone judge a person's character. This is also true. This time when Yan Hui came to Juncha, what she heard from her daughter about Lu Chang'an's feelings has changed a lot. "Yes, Sister Yan." Lu Chang'an nodded politely. He had always taught Zhou Dongdong that when he saw a young and beautiful woman, he should call her sister, and he himself followed suit. Yan Qingcheng opened her mouth slightly. This is definitely not Professor Lu, right? Although Yan Qingcheng knew Professor Lu from all aspects, she mainly formed her basic impression of Professor Lu from the stories told by her mother. He is a humorous, elegant, easygoing but slightly uninhibited man. Even if he could become Lu Chang'an, he wouldn't call his former student sister in such a fancy way, right? "This is Lu Chang'an, this is Lu Chang'an." Yan Qingcheng was shocked and silently chanting in her heart. She emphasized this point, completely unable to believe that Lu Chang'an like this could have the life of Professor Lu. "Sister Yan." Yan Hui covered her mouth and smiled, her willow waist trembled slightly, her buttocks swayed slightly, and suddenly the mountain flowers bloomed like mist, dewdrops dripped from the camellias, and the petals suddenly trembled and the fragrance spread out. "It seems that one thing my daughter said is right. Lu Chang'an has always been a beautiful woman, and he has such a sweet mouth. How can he not be liked? Lu Chang'an looked at Yan Hui's move of covering her mouth, and remembered that Yan Qingcheng also made such a move at Nanshan Ranch this afternoon. The two of them were most similar when doing this move, but after all, Yan Qingcheng was young and lacked a lot of charm. How can you call me mom and sister? Yan Qingcheng said angrily. Do you want me to call you uncle? She is not Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang actually often calls Lu Chang'an grandpa. The title grandpa was originally Lu Chang'an's testimony that Lu Jianxi was Lu Jianxi, but the person calling it was Zhu Huntang, which seemed a bit unreliable. After all, Zhu Huntang also called Shang Guandandan godmother, which made it even more confusing. It's outrageous. Your mother is my father's student. Just like in The Swordsman, when Lord Erno was older, Yu Lingshan just called him senior brother. It's okay for me to call him Sister Yan. It's okay to call him senior sister, Lu Chang'an said. He argued hard, and then picked a flower with leaves and gave it to Yan Hui. Thank you. Yan Hui nodded with a smile. This child was sweet-mouthed, good at talking, and personable. When chatting with Professor Lu in the evening, she asked him to help test how Lu Chang'an felt about Jinzi. I'm going to find Teacher Qin. Lu Chang'an nodded towards Yan Qingcheng and walked towards the elevator. Yan Qingcheng looked at Lu Chang'an's back and then at the flowers in her mother's hands. She couldn't help but curse in her heart. If her mother was just a person who had nothing to do with Professor Lu Jianxi, with Lu Chang'an's temperament, she might not care at all that this was a classmate. Mom, you also need to tease me, right? Fortunately, such a thing is unlikely to happen. Yan Qingcheng didn't quite understand how a woman feels when being moisturized before, but with a ready-made example of her mother in front of her with obvious before and after comparisons, Yan Qingcheng immediately understood that her mother's changes were because I was nourished by Professor Lu. Is this nourishment the change brought about by the relationship between men and women? Is it really that magical? It was difficult for Yan Qingcheng to understand that the content of the whispers between mother and daughter did not include these. Mom, when you lived at Teacher Qin's place, Professor Lu also came here, right? Yan Qingcheng suddenly had an idea. Yes. Yan Hui sniffed the flower in her hand. Then what does Professor Lu call Teacher Qin? Or what does Teacher Qin call Professor Lu? Well, Teacher Qin, Professor Lu recognizes her sister, right? Yan Hui's cheeks were slightly red. She mistakenly thought she was her biological sister at first, but Professor Lu helped with the massage that night, so it was definitely not a kiss. Younger sister? The expression on Yan Qingcheng's face was like a wrinkled orange peel that couldn't even be ironed flat. Why is the relationship between these people so messed up? I can't believe how many updates there will be when it breaks out tomorrow.